Good evening, Costa Mesa. Welcome to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 5th, 2020. At this time, we will call the meeting to order of our City Council and successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency and Special Housing Authority meeting. Now is the time for the national anthem. And I think that Councilman Mansour was going to lead the anthem, but he's not here. So let's see. Councilmember Chavez, would you like to lead the national anthem tonight?
Sure.
I'm sorry, not the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance. My bad. And then we will have Costa Mesa High School madrigals who will sing the national anthem. And then we will have a moment of solemn expression led by Pastor Christine Wallington from Seventh-day Adventist Church. Ms. Green or Councilmember Chavez, you want to lead us in the pledge, and then we'll hear from the Costa Mesa High School madrigals.
Sure. If everyone will stand and face the flag or a flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bora, do we have the high school? There we go.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, sailors, that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Beautiful. Thank you. If you're watching, thank you, Costa Mesa High School madrigals and Professor Lynn Forbes. Okay, now we have Pastor Christine Wallington. Ms. Green, can you please take Pastor Wallington off the mute?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
In this moment, Lord, we come to you. We come to you as a Costa Mesa community. And in expressions of love in the midst of social distancing, Lord, we come to you as a community that's still mourning and still finding ways to navigate these waters. Lord, I lift up the family of James Bluer in response to him being a bicyclist, especially in older years. Lord, I pray that you come close to his family. Lord, I thank you for the firefighters and those who responded quickly to Fairview Park in response so that the brush fire didn't get out of hand. And Lord, I pray for those, especially up north, who are dealing with fires as those first responders continue to be gallant in the ways that they respond. And Lord, as we have conversations about the monies and the ways and how to respond to this pandemic, Lord, I pray that you continue to guide us in the wisdom that you have for us to use those funds wisely and to use those funds in a way that brings effective support and change and continued protection of those most vulnerable at this time. And Lord, as the schools find ways to connect online and find ways to embrace each other without touching and without being able to see each other sometimes face to face, I pray for those teachers. Lift them up as they're finding ways to do hybrid teaching, ways to do interactive teaching while still being online. Lord, place them in your hands as they are molding the minds of the next generation. And Lord, these leaders who dare to continue to have these necessary conversations to do business and moving forward. I pray for a special blessing and a special protection that you might have on them, especially in this time, as we conduct business, as we share and show our love for Costa Mesa, and still find ways to connect and make change effective in this city that you've given us as leaders to be in. We love you, Lord. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Okay. Ms. Green, may we please have the roll?
Councilmember Chavez,
Present.
Councilmember Guinness,
Here.
Councilmember Mansour is absent. Councilmember Marr.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Foley.
Here. Thank you. Okay. Now, Ms. Barlow, do we have a city attorney report tonight?
I have nothing to report out from closed session so far this evening. We will be resuming our closed session after the conclusion of the regular meeting, although I do not expect to be making a report out at that time either.
Okay, thank you. And we have 4 presentations tonight. The first is the Mayor's Award, which we haven't had in a little while, so excited. Oh, look, I see Power of One Foundation was able to join us on the call. Thank you. Nice to see you both there. And so at this time, I am going to ask that we play the video. On behalf of the City of Costa Mesa, it's my pleasure to recognize the Power of One Foundation with our Mayor's Award. Through their hard work and partnership development, this amazing organization has been able to make a significant impact, not only in Costa Mesa, but throughout Orange County. Their food distribution events benefit hundreds of families. Let's take a look.
Power of One Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and we created our foundation because we care for our communities and we provide food assistance and other needed resources to our most at-risk communities. So we're working on creating sustainable and replicable models and systems that can go into other cities, other states, and other countries, and that will allow communities to more efficiently care for themselves. And then by creating those systems, then we're creating change that's sustainable and lasting.
When it comes to hunger and the disparity, in Orange County, 1 in 8 Orange County citizens face food disparity. When it comes to the kids, 1 in 6 kids face hunger disparity. And for Power of One, that is our fight. For us, we believe that the only way that we can solve hunger is through collaboration. So Power of One is a collaboration-based foundation that loves to partner with other like-minded individuals and also businesses that are boots on the ground in the fight, in the hunger, so that way we can all work together to solve this.
In Costa Mesa, when several of us were trying to figure out how to get a food drive started in the city, we had heard about the Power of One Foundation through their food drives in North Orange County. Through a couple phone calls, it wasn't hard to get a hold of one of the main organizers, Shawnee Witt. I was hoping to just get 5 minutes of her time to learn a little bit about how they ran their operation, and they were just so gracious. She and Andre not only were willing to share every lesson learned, but they said, we'll just come over and do a site walkthrough with you. This was at IKEA, who had already committed to helping on the food drives. And they spent a morning with us talking through the operation, looking at the site plan, telling us how to organize, and then worked with us to help set up the first food drive.
we have our food assistance initiative, and for that we have different food programs to get food out to the families that need it the most. So we have drive-through distributions, we have curbside pickup, and then we have an agency delivery program where agencies partner with us to get food out to senior care facilities and other housing organizations.
Bye, God bless you.
Our drive-through distribution program, they get in line with their car and they drive through, and they're hopefully greeted very friendly by our volunteers. We've had amazing volunteers come alongside us. Our goal is always to just spread love and dignity. Dignity is very important to us. People that are in need and needing assistance should never feel shame. So as they drive through, our volunteers wave, and when the trunks open, we're able to say hi to them a lot of times, and we fill up their trunks and they drive away. So it's an easy process. It's not something that we make complicated, so that they're just able to leave with dignity, love, and a trunk full of food.
The first couple of food distributions at IKEA, I was responsible for traffic and working with Costa Mesa PD, and so I was out talking to people as they were waiting in their cars, and that was a really humbling experience, because you got to hear firsthand their stories, why people were in line, how long they were willing to wait. And often, we think, gosh, how bad does it have to get for someone to wait in line for food? But it was a trade-off people were making, that they could pay for rent. This was another 40 or 50 bucks to go to rent, that they didn't have to spend on food. And so from the beginning, I had the opportunity to hear some of these stories and truly develop this level of empathy for what people were going through, that they were willing to wait in line for food on a Saturday morning.
We are here with a humble heart. We don't have all the answers. We just work hard. We work hard and we believe. We believe that change can be made. We don't believe that hunger has to exist in the way that it does. And so our long-term plan is to be able to build community leaders so that they can impact other people and build other community leaders. And our goal with Costa Mesa is to be able to stay in Costa Mesa as long as we can, to be able to work with the community now and in the further future, to be able to make sure that we can alleviate hunger.
3, 2, 1, cheese.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to our Costa Mesa TV team. That was a beautiful video that you did. Congratulations, Andre and Shawnee and Power of One Foundation for being recognized as the Mayor's Award recipients. I'm going to take just a moment to read the proclamation, which you will receive in person somehow. I'm so excited that you got to be here on the call with us. It's wonderful. So, whereas the mission of the Power of One Foundation is to provide basic human resources to every person in need of them, regardless of their country of origin, race, gender, or socioeconomic status. And whereas since the first confirmed cases of COVID-19 in early March, the Power of One Foundation quickly launched a COVID-19 crisis relief initiative to help families impacted by the unprecedented challenges of lost income from layoffs, furloughs, and businesses that shut down. And whereas, as the rapidly evolving pandemic unfolded across Orange County, the Power of One Foundation has been working diligently to assist the residents of the city of Costa Mesa by organizing food distributions at IKEA and the Orange County Fairgrounds, and recently, I'll add, at Save Our Youth as well. Whereas in their fight against hunger, the Power of One Foundation identified a need and dedicated themselves to help feed the most vulnerable families in our communities by creating a network of community partners, supporters, and volunteers to feed over 1.3 million people across Orange County. That is amazing. Whereas through their countless efforts, the Power of One Foundation continues to be a resource and driver in shaping the community and instilling a positive vision of service that will be felt for generations. Now, therefore, I, Katrina Foley, Mayor of the City of Costa Mesa, do hereby proclaim October 6th, 2020, a day to recognize the boundless efforts and valuable community service the Power of One Foundation staff and volunteers provide to help combat hunger in our community. Congratulations, and thank you so much. As a young girl, our family struggled with the need to get food sometimes from different places. And I think that your comments about protecting dignity and making sure that it's easy for people who are struggling to not have to make the choice between whether to pay the rent or buy groceries for their kids. I think that that is what makes your program so amazing and so unique and so deserving of the Mayor's Award. So thank you so much. And we have a moment before I turn it over to you. We have a message from our Assemblywoman, Connie Petrie Norris.
This is Assemblywoman Connie Petrie Norris. Congratulations to the Power of One Foundation on your recognition tonight from the Costa Mesa City Council. Your work is invaluable, and especially right now in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. You've played a vital role assisting the city of Costa Mesa and community partners with your COVID-19 Crisis Relief Fund and with food distributions all throughout Orange County. Your team has worked tirelessly, and you've provided a lifeline to so many families in need. I am truly grateful for partners like you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and with the city of Costa Mesa to help our community build back safely and stronger than ever.
Yay, thank you. And I don't want to forget to thank Council members Marr and Reynolds for all that you did to help bring Power of One to Costa Mesa and to organize and be the logisticians. I can't say that word, but to help bring this amazing organization to our city so that we can feed our most vulnerable. Andre or Shani, did you want to say anything?
Absolutely. First of all, we just want to say thank you so much to you, Katrina. We want to thank the city of Costa Mesa and all the supporters and working with us, because we couldn't have done this without you guys opening the doors. Andrea and Arliss, thank you so much. Andrea, you're out there at 5 o'clock in the morning with me helping pitch tents. Arliss, you've been out there.
Staying late.
Right, and then just got a chance to do something with Lorianne. So that was really exciting. So we just really thank you, and we look forward to continuing to work with you guys. The pandemic is one thing, but we know that this is going to continue on until this is alleviated. So we just want you to know, as an organization, we're here in the fight with you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be well. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a proclamation for Fire Prevention Week. That is, hold on one second. Okay, Fire Prevention Week started this week. It is October 4th to October 10th of 2020. Whereas the city of Costa Mesa is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting in Costa Mesa, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern locally, statewide, and nationally, as evidenced by our historic wildland fire season that we continue to battle. In addition to the historic wildland season this year, homes are the locations where people are at the greatest risk for fire every year. And whereas home fires killed more than 2,630 people in the United States in 2017, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to 350,000 home fires. Whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 173,200 annually between 2013 and 17. And whereas residents who've planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepped and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire, and whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half, And whereas Costa Mesa's fire service professionals are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through continual community risk reduction, prevention, and protection education. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme is Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Don't use your fryer outside in the rain. I know that. Now, therefore, I, Katrina Foley, Mayor of the City of Costa Mesa, do hereby proclaim October 4th through the 10th, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week throughout the city, and I urge all the people of Costa Mesa to prevent fire by checking their kitchens for fire hazards and using safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week 2020 and throughout the year, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Costa Mesa's fire, rescue, EMS, and community risk reduction services. I know that the fire department has been posting on their social media information about Fire Prevention Week. And so you can go to their Facebook page. You can learn all kinds of tips on how to keep your home safe and keep your family safe. Anything you would like to add, Chief Stefano?
I think you covered it. We are having virtual tours all week of the fire stations, so we encourage the public to enjoy those. We're also going to have throughout the county, all the fire chiefs have different cooking videos in the kitchen that's taking place. And this Saturday, Observe from the Curb. We have our firefighters that are going out through each community on different paths. Those will be posted, and they will be waving and enjoying the public in their first in areas. So we appreciate your support, the council's support, and thank you so much, Mayor Foley.
Yes, and thank you. Usually this time of year, we get to go to the fire stations and all the kids get to come in and learn how to use all the equipment and have demonstrations. Can't do that this year. So we appreciate you trying to make it creative opportunities for our community to continue to learn about fire safety and what our fire department does. So thank you, Chief. Okay, our next item, we have a lot of proclamations tonight. It happens to be Mini Awareness Month proclamations. So as many of you know, this is October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I see our city manager has her ribbon on. Thank you. I'm wearing my pink tonight. Usually this time of year, when my boys were in high school, we would have the whole football team would be decked out in pink socks and pink everything so that we could pay tribute to some of the moms at our school who, especially Sue Ross, who lost their life to breast cancer. So we'll keep remembering them every year. And for those of you who don't know, make sure you go get your mammogram and get checked. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is October 2020, whereas in the United States, more than 268,000 women and approximately 2,600 men are diagnosed with breast cancer annually. And the disease is the second most common form of cancer and the second leading cause of cancer death overall among American women, with a staggering 41,000 lives lost each year. Whereas early detection and regular screening mammograms, followed by timely treatment upon diagnosis, can significantly improve a patient's chance of survival. And whereas 2020 has been a powerful reminder that we are all in this together, and our choices and actions have the power to protect the most vulnerable among us in a big way. Whereas in this especially trying time, we join together in support of our fellow Costa Mesans diagnosed with breast cancer, those who are in remission, and those who have lost loved ones to the disease. I would like to also point out that our own former mayor, Mary Hornbuckle, is a survivor of breast cancer, so we are fortunate to still have her with us. Now, therefore, I, Katrina Foley, Mayor of the City of Costa Mesa, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I urge Costa Mesa residents, especially those who have a family history or may be at increased risk, to consult with their healthcare providers about the individual likelihood of developing breast cancer. And I urge all Costa Mesans to help increase awareness of how we can fight breast cancer and support those who've been impacted by it. Normally this time of year, we would be with the, all the walks that go on in the community for breast cancer awareness. So please do reach out to your friends and your moms and your sisters and your aunts and your grandmas. Well, make sure that they get their breasts checked. Thank you. Okay, we have one more proclamation. And this is for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's also in October. Whereas October is annually recognized as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month and is especially important in this year as cases of domestic violence are increasing in our communities. And whereas the marginalization of certain groups in society, including undocumented individuals, transgender individuals, and people living with disabilities, increases their vulnerability to domestic violence, and that approximately 40% of California women experience physical, intimate partner violence in their lifetimes, contributing to domestic violence as the third leading cause of homelessness among families in the United States. And whereas domestic violence programs in California provide essential life-saving services for survivors, their children, and communities, and whereas domestic violence affects people of all genders, sexual orientations, ages, racial, ethnic, cultural, social, religious, and economic groups in the United States and here in California. And whereas all survivors deserve access to culturally responsive programs and services to increase their safety and self-sufficiency, and all the communities deserve access to culturally responsive prevention programs and initiatives to improve overall community health and safety by challenging the societal norms that perpetuate violence. Now, therefore, I, Katrina Foley, Mayor of the City of Costa Mesa, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I urge Costa Mesa residents to observe Domestic Violence Awareness Month with appropriate programs and activities that promote healthy relationships and raise awareness about intimate partner violence in their communities. And especially for our teenage young women, it's never acceptable for your partner to ever hit you. So don't accept that. Please tell someone. Okay. Whew, that was a lot.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Green.
We have representatives for this item that would like to speak.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm not sure who they are. Could you please announce them?
Marissa Presley, please.
Oh, okay, Ms. Presley.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Katrina Foley. I really appreciate it. On behalf of Human Options, to all of the City of Costa Mesa and the City Council members, thank you so much for this proclamation. We are very proud to partner with you. And Mayor Foley, you are correct on mentioning that teenagers are at high risk. Right now in the United States, it's 1.5 million youth who are in abusive relationships. So thank you for this proclamation. I would love to take this moment to invite all of you to our fall event. It's absolutely free. It's only 1 hour of your time. And we have, as part of the event, our California Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who will be talking specifically about the effects of trauma in children in their brain development. So you guys are all welcome. We have a 24-hour crisis hotline, the emergency shelter, and many, many other resources for the community, and especially for all of the residents of Costa Mesa. Thank you so much, Mayor and council members.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Human Options is an excellent partner in our community. You provide amazing services and you help so many. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I noticed there is another person on the call. Ms. Green is, do we have, oh no, that's one of our team members. Never mind. Okay, so now is the time in the meeting for public comments. At this time, if you'd like to speak to an item, or if you'd like to speak on an item that is not on our city council agenda, you can press *9 or raise your hand in the participants window and then press *6 on your telephone once you've been recognized to speak. Let's see if we have any people who would like to speak at this time. We have a couple of speakers. Katie Newman.
Hi, good evening, council members. I'm Katie Newman, as mentioned. I am working with the Triangle Square renovation project and specifically handling the community outreach. And I wanted to let the community know that we are hosting a community meeting that's open to all residents of the city of Costa Mesa who are interested in attending next week on Wednesday, October 14th at 6:30 p.m. And the event will be hosted on Zoom. And so to register, please send us an email at hello@trianglesquare.community. And I'll repeat that one more time. It's going to be Wednesday. That's next Wednesday, October 14th at 6:30 p.m. And the email address to register is hello@trianglesquare.community. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is call-in user 2. Ms. Green, do we have a way to let that person know?
Yes, call-in user 2. If you hit *6 to unmute yourself. Call-in user 2, you should have gotten an alert. And if you hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry, here I am.
There's a little bit of echo, but go ahead.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm calling regarding a council meeting that was held on July 21st, and it was in regards to the project labor agreement. And at that time, it was held at about 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and it was to be postponed. And it was at that time deemed to be so urgent a matter as to hold it early in the morning. And it's never been called back. And I have a question about that. And when I was going over some of the details regarding that project labor agreement, which allows certain specific unions to have assignments from the city on city projects, I noted that Local 12 Operating Engineers Union had been on that list. And on that list, the operating engineers had donated approximately $12,000 to $15,000 to Mayor Foley for her failed state senate race and also her mayor.
Okay, it looks like you cut out. I'm not sure if you hit a button on your phone, but we lost you. Ms. Spadoni, are you there still? We lost you. Okay, we'll come back to you if you come back. Okay, the next speaker is the phone number ending 869. Are you there? 869, you can press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Hi there.
Hi, good evening. Recently, a friend of mine showed me a flyer to basically saying to real-life John Stevens, and one of the things that that flyer said is that while being on council, he was successful at reducing crime and protecting neighborhoods from overdevelopment. And that sort of made me mad because I don't think that's the case at all. That is protecting neighborhoods from overdevelopment. I think that Mr. Stevens actually never met a high-density project he didn't like, and one example is One Metro West. That project in particular has a lot of problems, yet Mr. Stevens and the city council majority have continually tried to ram it down Costa Mesa residents' throats. try to weaken Y, try to take away the people's right to be able to vote on certain big projects. And I just think it's disingenuous for Mr. Stevens to basically imply that he's pro-smart growth when that, in fact, is not the case. Also, I happen to be on the little committee that initially helped write Y and put it on the ballot and collect signatures. So at that time, I know that actually Mr. Stevens and Mayor Foley were very lukewarm and actually opposed to Measure Y, but it was so popular and it passed so well that really they didn't dare to oppose it, and in fact are not trying to ride its coattails again, waiting to be reelected and then try to neuter it and do whatever it takes to take away the people's vote. So anyways, just wanted to comment on that. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone is staying safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Matt Nesselrode. Mr. Nesselrode, are you there?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for serving your local city in the ways that you do. First time calling in, and had a simple question for staff. If you could help me with the answer, I'd appreciate it. I sent it via email a week or so ago, and I just thought the response was poor and inadequate. So I'm asking now, what data is the $100 fine mask mandate based on, and at what point will that mandate be lifted? I'm not a resident in Newport Beach, but I frequent Costa Mesa. I'm a resident in Newport Beach, but I frequent Costa Mesa. My 3-year-old daughter goes to preschool in Costa Mesa. And it just makes me sad and somewhat angry to see children as young as 3 wearing masks in public. But it goes well beyond that. So I'd like to just hear an answer, if there is one, as to, when is that going to be lifted and what data is that based on?
Okay, thank you so much. When the city attorney, when it's her turn to give her report, I'll ask that she address that issue because it's not a Costa Mesa specific only issue. It's a statewide. So
no. What
speaker,
my understanding?
I understand. I'm going to have Ms. Barlow address it. Next speaker, I don't think we have anyone else. Actually, I see that 869 is back. Ms. Spadoni, I'll give you another bite at the apple, even though I know it's not in my best interest. But go ahead, Ms. Spadoni. Are you there? Press *6 on your phone, Ms. Spadoni.
Madam Mayor, we do have another caller, call-in user 3.
Okay, call-in user 3. We'll go to you. Are you there? If you could press *6 on your telephone.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, this is Mary again. I called in earlier. Evidently, I got disconnected. I was talking about the July 21st meeting that was in regards to the project labor agreement. And that meeting went over quite a bit early in the morning till about 1 or 1:15, and it was supposed to be postponed until the next meeting, but it's never been called back up on the agenda. As I was reviewing this, for those who don't know, this is a union project which will allow certain unions to do the building of any city projects. And in this group of unions that are specifically selected is a Local 12 of the Operating Engineers Unit. And again, that Local 12 Operating Engineers Unit donated approximately $12,000 to $14,000 to Mayor Foley's fund. But even more so than that is that the candidate in District 2, Mr. Gameros, who is evidently in management in Local 12 of the Operating Engineers Unit, that I was just wondering what's going to happen if he gets elected. Will he have to conflict on every single project having to do with the labor project agreement? I think that's something that the voters might consider in casting their ballot in District 2. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, 869 was the same caller, Ms. Green, so we can skip that one. And I don't see any other hands raised. If you'd like to speak at this time, please raise your hand in the participants window or press *9 on your telephone. I don't see anyone else. Okay, we will close public comment at this time.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I can just note for the record that we've also received 5 emails from the public regarding opposition to Proposition 16. The emails were provided to the City Council and posted on the city website and made part of the record.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we will move to council member comments. This is the time for council members to provide comments and committee reports. Please unmute yourself when I call your name, and your time is limited to 4 minutes. We'll start with Councilmember Guinness.
Well, I just want to thank everybody who called in today. I do hope that people will make their thoughts known about Triangle Square. There was a survey out, and I took it, and I'm not sure. I think a lot of people on Nextdoor took it as well. And so I think people need to stay on top of that. While the mask issue, I know the city attorney will be covering that. One of the things that I find a little frustrating on this is some of the information coming from the governor's office, it changes so frequently. And the other part of it is, while we do our best to comply, it's difficult because it changes so much. And the other part of it is, some of it is logical to me, some of it is not logical to me. And it's very disappointing because, as someone who has some science background, a fair bit of science background, I really do want to see things based on the science. Thank you.
Next speaker is Councilman Reynolds.
Good, thank you. The rules do change a lot, don't they? Thank you, staff, for all of your hard work and keeping track of those rules and helping to keep us informed as they change, and appreciate all of the work you're doing. I do want to acknowledge, I'm often sending you questions for information and forwarding complaints. I did realize the other day, I don't think I've acknowledged how good I think the city social media has been, and the snapshot and other information getting out to the community. So I've really noticed an uptick of that through a really difficult time. So I appreciate all the efforts to keep us aware of all of the updates and changes, even as we're working to understand them. So thank you for that. It's really nice to celebrate today the Power of One Foundation, and to recognize the work, really important work that they're doing, as well as Human Options. I want to just again reiterate the importance of making information available for victims, male or female, of domestic violence. We've heard some difficult stories through COVID with the impacts of elevated stresses again, and also because people are home, it's created an additional obstacle for people to get out of those situations. So I think it's really important to be aware of that today and support efforts to make available resources and information for those victims. And want to thank, I've had a lot of conversations in the past month from various residents on various code enforcement and nuisance issues, from loud music to rats in trash bins that are left open. And I want to appreciate all of those residents for reaching out and sharing those concerns, being diligent in documenting what you see and descriptive. We are working on all of that, and high priority to make Costa Mesa a comfortable and safe place to live. So please do continue reaching out and letting us know what you're experiencing in your neighborhood. And one other topic we've gotten a lot is the impact of short-term rentals. So I believe we have a study session on that this time next week. So please tune in on that, and I'm sure we'll get information out on our awesome social media and other information channels. So that's a high interest across the city that I know we've talked about a number of times here on council. I'm excited about the next 3 days. We have the League of California Cities Conference, and there are a number of really great sessions that I'm planning to attend in between my own work meetings, from community resilience to complete streets to economic resilience to the role of local governments in climate change. So lots of things that we hear from the community members that are of interest, we continue to study and learn about. So I'm really excited to learn from other cities on what they're doing on those issues. Love Costa Mesa Day was a really nice, positive way to get out in the community this weekend. Thank you so much to Trellis for establishing that day and really growing it every year. And even making plans to make that happen, even through the challenges with COVID this year. I was on my way to Fairview Park because I hadn't been out there in a while, and I'm on that committee. And I got sidetracked by a sign in my neighborhood and actually ended up spending the day with a small group of neighbors working to help an elderly neighbor clear her backyard. And it was just really special to see a group of neighbors willing to sweat and get all cut up as we carried branches out, you know, to support a neighbor in a way that none of us would necessarily enjoy. Although we do hope to have I think a picnic one day in her backyard after it gets cleaned up. So that was a really fun day. And I look forward to more of those types of activities. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on, I guess, my regular Safe Streets commentary. I'm usually very positive about safe streets because I know that there's so much positive benefit to, of course, safety, community connections, economic growth. But I have to admit, it's been a difficult week on that front. I took a late night walk the other day and noticed marks from donuts being driven, I guess, in particular at Placentia and Wilson, you know, right in front of an elementary school. I can hear every night, and I get emails from residents every night about street racing. You can hear the sounds of street racing on our streets. We had a death over the weekend, and it is not the first in recent memory. This one was a death through a collision with a tow truck, and I can think of 2 other tow truck related deaths in our city. I think it was Sunday night. I saw a picture of a car that had literally gone airborne and flipped over on Pomona Avenue, also in front of a school. And that picture shared on social media just created a whole storm of other, you know, anecdotal stories about safety, in particular on Pomona, but safety on our streets and car accidents. I learned today about another pedestrian collision that I don't think was reported. It's not in our database. So I know I've been looking at data on injuries, and I know that that's underreported for a variety of reasons. So while I'm fully committed to continue to look for, you know, lower cost, effective ways to improve safety on our streets, especially in our neighborhoods, especially around our schools. I just think just this week, the sort of accumulation of stories, there's been lots of articles and evidence, and I think our transportation engineers have shared this too, that speeds have increased as traffic has decreased in our city over COVID. It is, lives are at risk with vehicles. When every time you get in your car, you're driving a 2,000-pound piece of metal, and you're dangerous if you are not driving carefully. So I ask every driver in Costa Mesa to be very, very aware and conscious of the power you have to take someone's life if you drive irresponsibly. And I really encourage our staff and council members and everyone listening to really pay attention to a lot of the stories that are coming out, the new ideas that are coming out to help mitigate the potential for injury and death on our roadways through better infrastructure and education. So I just had to take a moment to speak about this topic very seriously because it is urgent in my mind. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Reynolds, and thanks for all your work that you do in that regard.
Next up is Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a bit hard to go to a positive note after that discussion, so I'll continue it a little bit. Particularly when it comes to higher speeds on Pomona and Meyer and Wallace Street. I live on 20th Street, right between both Pomona and Wallace, and I'm about a block away from Meyer. And the constant calls and texts and Instagram shares, and even what I'm hearing myself of people speeding on these streets are kind of indicative of the fact that we should be looking at some traffic slowing measures on those three streets. I'm very happy that city staff put white lines today on Pomona. I saw them doing that. But we really should be, as Will shared, it's not the first time we've seen accidents on Pomona. It's the first time I hear a lot of noise on Wallace, and it's the first time people are caught speeding on Meyer. So just to put point for staff that these are recurring things happening in this part of town. Alongside that, with County Street, I know there's a lot of issues with the short-term rental on that street. Like Reynolds said, we are going to have a study session next week about that. So if you have any thoughts or concerns or questions or comments, please send it to the council. It'd be very pertinent for us to know before we have that meeting next Tuesday. And then finally, on the last piece of tough news to hear, I guess. There were multiple complaints from residents on Center Street about Smart and Final, and it's been brought to my attention that employees of Smart and Final have actually been cursing the F-bomb at one of our residents on Center Street, who is taking recordings of the noises and during the day. That to me is unacceptable. I know staff has spoken with Smart and Final before, and I've brought it up before, and it seems like when we go, it's always in the bounds of their reason. However, having seen two separate occasions where their back staff, the storage staff, is being blatantly insulted to residents of Costa Mesa, I think it's perhaps a time for us to take a bit deeper dive on that, because it might be escalating to a point of a feud, and I just don't think that's intelligent for a business and a resident to be doing that issue. So just bring it up to staff. Never appropriate to do that to anybody using F-bomb. That's just not right. On to a bit of more positive news. I was happy to see City of Costa Mesa work alongside Power of One and Save Our Youth, and alongside our Assemblywoman Carly Pichinoris to do a food bank and census help and mass distribution at Save Our Youth last Saturday. It's always fun to see people come together, and I know people left happy with the food and with the help of the census. And for those who have not heard, it has actually been extended out. So if you're not doing your census, please do it. It's really easy. Just census2020.gov. Honestly, I've done it on my phone. It's really simple. It's only a few questions, and it is protected. And if you know anyone who's not done the census yet, please do it. This is money that goes directly to our cities. This comes from the federal government, and if we don't get it, we're just losing out money. This money that goes to our schools, money that goes to our public safety, to our first responders, to our infrastructure. So it's really important to go out and do the census. And then real quickly, I wouldn't be a Subaru head without mentioning this cool fact. See that one is Subaru. But this Saturday was actually Subi Fest here at the OC Fairgrounds. And we actually had the largest car parade for Subarus in America. So just quick shout out to all my Subaru heads. We did it. And thank you guys. Have a good meeting.
That's funny. Okay, thank you for sharing. Councilmember Mar.
Funny because it was actually super obnoxious to live near the fairgrounds over the weekend. So anyway, so congratulations to CMTV for just killing it lately. I mean, we've got the best videos for Hispanic Heritage Month. They turned around that Power of One Foundation video. They turned around the Love Costa Mesa video. And I know they're watching this because they have to. And so I wanted to make the point of saying, you guys are doing an incredible job. And every time I turn around, there's some like amazing video on our social media. So I check out other cities occasionally just to compare ourselves, and like there is no one putting out that level of information with those beautiful videos like we are. So thank you guys. I really, really appreciate your work. On Power of One, thank you so much, Mayor Foley, for presenting them with the Mayor's Award and giving them a chance to speak. It's been just a really, there's not much that's been good about COVID, but getting to know Andre and Shani and work with them through this process has been one of the blessings for sure. They are always in need of additional funding, and so if you were listening to this and interested in helping out and inspired by that video we put together and their message, they're always looking for more ways in which we can be more sustainable and keep this going even past COVID. As they mentioned, they've been mentoring, so many of the volunteers who have shown up week after week, they've actually been mentoring to start their own food distributions, which is really very cool that they take this idea of bringing up others with them quite seriously. So if you're interested in that, please shoot me an email, send me a text. I'd be happy to talk to you about their needs or connect you directly with Andre and Shani. I participated in Love Costa Mesa this weekend also, along with the mayor painting a crosswalk. So that was pretty fun. Might have been really dehydrated after 4 hours in the sun with no water, but you know, that was on me. Anyway, so go check it out. Oh, and the city manager was there, and the city manager's son was there, and everyone had paid on them, but after a couple of hours. I do want to say the neighboring efforts that Trellis does are year round. So if you've got a neighbor who needs some help picking up around their yard, if you know somebody in need, if there's something going on that you think that somebody could use some help with, you can contact Trellis year round, and there's an army of volunteers willing to help out. It doesn't just have to be one day of service. I've been meaning to ask the city manager this, so I'll just say it now. Can you give us a status of the hazard mitigation plan at some point? I know that was one of the documents that we were working on before COVID hit and then completely got pushed to the wayside, but it'd be nice to think about the next emergency at some point, given the track that 2020 is on. And then last but not least, I think some of you might have seen some of the headlines about other cities in Orange County. City of Fullerton in particular caught my eye in terms of the budgetary crisis that they're in right now. And I do want to commend our financial team, including the city manager. I think at the time when we started talking about the budget in June, July, it sort of felt like, why are we the only city that's making drastic cuts? What other cities have employees that have been furloughed? And now we're really seeing headlines from other cities who either kind of kicked the can down the road or figured they would look at the first quarter of 2021 and see where they fell. And we took action so early that I'm really optimistic that we're going to get through kind of the worst of it ahead of the curve. And that just means we get to go back to normal sooner, hopefully, or that net, this is going to end up costing us less because we did take such severe action early. So, you know, I just really want to commend Lorianne, you and your staff for doing that. I think, like I said at the time, it seemed like maybe we were too far ahead of the curve, or that it felt really extreme. But in retrospect, man, we did the right thing. So, you know, if anybody in the public has questions about that, I've seen a couple of interesting election-related comments about the budget. I'd be happy to add any clarity I can to how that process evolved and why we're in the position we are now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for coordinating and helping with that crosswalk mural. It turned out great. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yeah, thank you very much. So for my comments today, I'm really going to talk about two things: short-term rentals and mosquitoes, in that order. So the short-term rental issue has really bubbled up in the last, it's been going, but in the last 2-3 weeks, month, it's become a serious problem. And I'm really glad that we have our study session on October 13th to start to explore solutions. Mayor Foley and I met with a group at Wakeham Park that's up in that area. There's a real problem with the house on Visalia, And I was so impressed, and I want to thank Captain Bacala, who on a moment's notice was willing to meet with residents, and then that subsequently we met in Wacom Park, and Sergeant Grumman joined us. And thank you very much for the great information that he provided to people who are really being adversely affected by this particular party house. So thank you very much to the PD for that. They did a great job, and we're going to get to the bottom of that in our study session. Now on to mosquitoes. So tomorrow I have a meeting with the neighbors on Swan Drive, and I believe Councilmember Guinness and Councilmember Reynolds are going to join as well, and staff. And the issues with mosquitoes in the ponds, in the wetlands of Fairview Park has been an ongoing problem pretty much ever since they were installed in 2012. Even before I was elected, I remember meeting in the backyard with Councilmember Guinness and Mayor Foley was council member at the time, talking to those very residents, and they've been very patient about this. We've tried in many ways to address their concerns. We now have traps that we've gotten from Vector Control that we've paid for and put in their backyard. Unfortunately, I just learned that those traps have been trapping some West Nile mosquitoes. So this isn't just about not being able to use their beautiful backyards, but it's a serious health concern. We cleared out, there's a lot of maintenance that's been done there, but one that stands out, we cleared out 7 tons of reeds out of one of the ponds. If you can imagine how many reeds that was. Of course, they grew back. And most importantly, we commissioned a report, the city council did, by a group called DUDEC. And I have to be very careful about how I talk about that because it was done under the cover of the work product privilege, because when something is like so FUBAR as these ponds, you got to get a lawyer involved, and we did. We have a lawyer involved, and the lawyer commissioned this report. And suffice it to say, without getting into the details, that the report identifies that there are issues there, which are apparent, they're patent issues there, and has some recommended solutions. And so what I'd like to see the council do, and I know it's very ambitious, but if we could do it possibly this month or within a month or so, have a study session, just like we're doing on the short-term rentals, to just roll out to the whole council what it is that the issue is, what are the recommendations, start to develop a timeline about how to deal with this. Because the folks there on Swan Drive and the people that are using Fairview Park, which of course is one of our jewels, have been dealing with this issue literally for 8 years. And so it might take us another 5 years to fix it. I just want that 5 years to begin now in 2020 and to do what we can to do it. So I call on staff. I understand, let's not have perfect be the enemy of good. Let's lay these issues out. Let's lay the solutions out. Let's lay the challenges out. Let's listen to those neighbors. Let's get together as a body and address this important issue that we've been kind of nibbling on the edges about for so long. So that's what I'd ask for us to do as soon as possible. And I don't ask for much, but I'm asking for this.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens. Thanks for the good work that you're doing in that regard. Okay. It's been a very busy week. We had I Love Costa Mesa Day, which was really wonderful, actually. Thank you so much to Trellis and all of the volunteers and the nonprofits that helped to organize and the donors that helped to support that activity in our city. I think it came at a good time. People really needed to have something like that, positive, productive, to do, where it's low touch, socially distant, but you still feel like you're doing something for the community. And I think many of us missed that. And so it was fun to be out there painting the crosswalk. There was lots of little ones out there helping, and some students from Costa Mesa High School, and Councilmember Marr keeping everybody moving so that we could meet Mr. Setharaman's timeline. So thank you so much. And today I had the opportunity to participate in the topping ceremony for our Orange County Museum of Art. Ms. Green, can you show the pictures? A topping ceremony is when the last beam is being placed before they top the building. And in this case, you know, it's a very, very tall structure. We got to sign the beam, and we also got to observe them take the beam from this location on the ground and up into the air with big operating crane. And then those two gentlemen that are up there in those baskets helped to place that white beam there. And it was pretty exciting. The Ironworkers Local 433 are the operators that helped to make that happen. And they are so skilled with the crane that they actually kept that tree on the beam the whole time. So it was very exciting. It's a great project. For those of you who don't know, we're building this amazing $73 million museum, and it will be a museum that will be competitive worldwide. The project itself has more than 350 workers working there right now, and they have good union jobs. They have 60 small businesses that are serving all of the needs of the construction project. And what I found to be really impressive is with all of that activity throughout the pandemic, they persevered and they thought safety first. And I believe there was only one person that had tested positive for COVID during the entirety of the time. So great showing of great progress for our city. And while museums tend to be a look at the past, I think what we can see with this new museum is that it's going to be all about the future. So looking forward to next year when it opens, and it really completes some people call it a puzzle, some people call it tying the bow, but whatever it is, it's the vision of Henry Segerstrom, who donated the land for this site and who really gave a lot to our community. So it was great to be a part of that today. And you can watch it virtually. It's on the Orange County Museum of Art website. I wanted to also share that on Friday, I met with, you can remove the picture now. I met with our Assemblywoman and Dr. Chow and Casey Reitz from Segerstrom Center for the Arts and a couple of other staff members from their team to talk about kind of what is it, what's allowed, what's not allowed for purposes of our Performing Arts Center, because, you know, they're really struggling because they're not allowed to have events or to be open. Some of the guidance is a little bit contradictory because you can go to a movie, but you can't go to a performance in a concert hall where in all likelihood the protections are much lower risk for you than a movie theater. So we talked about what's available. We've come up with a plan for the Performing Arts Center and for what will be allowed outdoors in the Argyros Arts Plaza. So look forward to seeing some activity there. Of course, everyone will be required to wear their mask and maintain social distance, but at least they'll be able to get moving and progress forward. It was a really good meeting, and I'm very appreciative of the access that Dr. Chow has given to many of the mayors and others in the community, business leaders and nonprofits, city managers, to be able to answer questions, because it all is very fluid and sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. But I know that the goal is, you know, we don't have a manual for this. Nobody's ever been in a pandemic with a virus in this manner, and so we're doing our best. Also wanted to share that Councilman Reynolds and I had participated in our Homeless Shelter Advisory Council meeting last week. Really great meeting. We got a good update from from our team, and residents who participated had good suggestions and input. Some concerns, of course, are that we're starting to see a little bit of a rise. And I think Councilmember Reynolds, could you put yourself on mute? Starting to see a little bit of an uptick in areas where people are starting to encamp. And of course, we've addressed the concerns about the fires in Talbot Park and Fairview Park. And I know that our team is working on that. Also very proud of the work that our division on homelessness have done with regard to housing. We've housed now, in the middle of the pandemic, we keep housing people, which is a testament to the hard work that they're doing. So it's hard enough to house people under normal conditions. They've continued to house people during the pandemic, and we're now up to, I think that it was reported, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Price, but I think we're up to now 71 housed through our homeless shelter. That doesn't count the numerous people that have been housed outside the shelter on the streets. That give us up to about 160, I think it is, people that have been housed permanently that were previously homeless. So thank you all for the great work you're doing there. Couple of items I'd like to request. Well, first, let me remind everyone, we have a testing center at the fairgrounds. If you need to get tested, it's free. There's no requirement of insurance. It's very simple. You go to 360clinic.md and you fill out the reservation information so that it makes it easy when you go in. It's a 10-minute little drive through, and you can get your results within 24 hours. So please, if you need to get tested, there is no reason to pay $150 to anyone to get tested, which I know many people are doing. So please don't do that. And if you're an employer, please don't pay, because it's free. We pay taxes, and that's why we're able to offer this. Can we get an update on when we expect our parks master plan to ever see the light of day again? I know that like a year ago, it kind of, this is before your time, Lorianne, Ms. Farrell Harrison, but it got kind of taken off the timeline and multiple reasons, but I do think that maybe it needs to go back to the Parks Commission and maybe start that process from parks and move it forward again. So hopefully we did invest quite a bit of money in preparing that plan, and then it just kind of has languished. So if we could get moving on that now that we have a new community services and parks director, that'd be great. And then also at our study session next week, if it's not too late, I think it would be helpful if we had the community choice information from the city of Irvine and their team. They've offered to come and do a presentation for our council, because all of the deadlines are approaching within the next couple of months. And so all that needs to happen is for the city manager to contact them and ask them, their team from their call the Public Works Department and ask them to give the presentation at our next meeting or at another meeting. But it seemed like since we're meeting next week, it might be an opportunity. It's a brief presentation, but it'll give an opportunity for the whole council to hear what is and is not the plan, and what are the timelines and what's expected from the council. And I think it's really good, or from the city. I think there's a lot of good work that's being done. So I think it would be great if everybody got to hear that information. And I think that's all I had. So thank you all. Now, let's see, Ms. Farrell Harrison, do you have a report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, and obviously good evening to our public that's calling in and listening in. Great updates from our City Council, always so heavily engaged in all the challenges that we're facing during a pandemic, while still trying to provide high quality services and keep our communication flow to the public as well as we can, given the circumstances. So thank you so much to the council for acknowledging the work of our Costa Mesa TV team. We've find that this has been an incredible resource, especially now, to get information out in quick sound bites and easy to use formats that even people with either hearing impairments or other disabilities can actually visually understand what's happening. And it's just created an amazing opportunity for us to be able to communicate in many different ways that we hadn't in the past. And so thank you for acknowledging the efforts of our staff. Thank you for helping to push us to continue to broaden our outreach and to be more creative and more timely in getting the information out. And so we appreciate the efforts that you've made to help us get engaged in this way. And then, of course, thank you to staff for making it come to life. So really happy about that. And they are an award-winning team. They did win 5 awards that we'll bring to you, Mayor, for you to be able to present to them at a future council meeting. So really excited about the work that they've been doing. And thank you for the kind remarks. That's always very welcome and very fulfilling for staff. And they've been working tirelessly to get a lot of good information out there. So I wanted to give an update on Measure Q. Just from an educational standpoint, please be aware that the City Council did place a ballot measure on the November 3rd, 2020 ballot, and that is Measure Q. It is the Costa Mesa Retail Cannabis Tax and Regulation Measure. And we've created a web page to provide educational materials for you that have been developed with the oversight of our city attorney. These are educational materials only, but please avail yourselves of that information if you need additional information in advance of the election to make an informed decision. And that's at www.costamesameasureq.com. And so there are materials there that, again, we have developed in concert with our city attorney to provide education to the community on this ballot measure. Also expect information to be delivered in mailboxes as early as this week, the end of this week. And so that's information on Measure Q, and continue to dial in there for information. As mentioned, it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and just wanted to thank all of the employees that have participated. We've been able to put together a great virtual program to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's been really great watching the videos from Councilmembers Reynolds, Mar, and Chavez. They've been a lot of fun to watch, and I'm pretty impressed with some of your athletic feats, I have to say, especially during the pandemic. When some of us have become just more sedentary, and it's a little bit more difficult to move around. As per COVID, I just wanted to update that we're still in the red tier. We had hoped to move into the orange tier. We were so close. We were just a couple of percentage points away from actually moving into the next tier. And so just wanted to stress the importance of continued mask wearing, continued distancing, and sanitizing measures so that we could try to get into the next tier as soon as possible. We are experiencing a slight uptick in the county. It's very slight, but it could, if it continues, not be what we'd like to see. And so please continue to wear the mask and to take all of the measures that we've been taking to get to red, and then hopefully move into the orange tier as soon as possible so that our businesses could open to an additional stage and expand services and, of course, reopen further into the economy. So please continue the great work there. And then I did want to just say how much of a pleasure it was to participate in the Power of One Foundation's food giveaway, mask giveaway, census sign up over at Soy at Save Our Youth. That was a lot of fun. Also, thank you to Trellis for Luck Costa Mesa. This was my first one. And I have to say it was a lot of fun updating or just refreshing the Bark Park mural with Josh Madrid and his family. And it was also just a lot of fun to be able to paint and just see something come to life right before our eyes. Just quick work that we could do to just change the look and the feel and the artistry of our city. And so just really excited to have the opportunity to do that. And I was able to get my son out from watching video games and sitting in a chair. So that was good. And some human interaction for the kids is always positive. So we'll be bringing back that hazmat plan update. I know that Jason Dempsey is taking the lead with our department heads on that. So I'll have him provide an update at the next meeting. I did also want to remind everyone that we are going to bring the CCE discussion forward that's currently slated for October 20th because Salem would also like to participate. And so I'll reach out to Save Irvine and see how we could do a coordinated presentation so you can hear from our staff and then also from Irvine. So that's slated for October 20, the second meeting in October with our staff as well presenting in a receive and file format so that it no action taken, but just giving information. And then of course we'll have the short-term rentals study session next week that Development Service is leading. So looking forward to hearing from you on all of that. And then we'll also have a finance update for you at our next meeting where we can give some preliminary feedback on the efforts we took early on related to the potential shortfalls and then what that means going forward. And so just always thankful to have the opportunity to give you updates. And again, thanks for the accolades for staff. Always a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Just Ms. Farrell-Harrison, it's my understanding that we will need to vote on something before the end of the year, and we only have really 2 meetings that follow October 20th. So I'm not sure. October 20th is a regularly scheduled city council meeting. Is there any way we could do the study session, the presentation next week, and then have that October 20th meeting where we could actually vote on something?
I'll check with staff on where we are with the information and the data collection. I do think that there's an important component with the SCE data collection efforts where we won't have the information quite in hand to be able to do that. So,
okay.
We'll look to see if there are other opportunities for us to engage one more time, either through a special meeting or another process to be able to keep us on track if needed.
Okay. And Councilman Moore, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Mr. Harrison said it. We just need, the data process isn't going to happen until November. I'm actually concerned it's going to go too long into November, but we're definitely not going to be ready for the second piece of it until then.
Okay. So well, we can talk offline, but my understanding based on the communication that was shared with me is that we still need to move forward with deciding on whether we want to proceed with the JPA or not, regardless of the data collection piece. So I just want to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity and we get it on the timeline accordingly. Okay. And then Ms. Farrell-Harrison, did you want to share also about some ribbons that we have?
Thanks for the reminder. I just wanted to thank the team in the city manager's office. Alma Reyes and Hadassah placed ribbons along the trees here right on Fair Drives in commemoration of both breast cancer awareness and domestic violence prevention months. So you'll see pink and purple ribbons decorating our foliage out there just in solidarity with all breast cancer survivors and domestic violence victims, and just keeping them all in our thoughts and engaged in moving these efforts forward. So if you take a look and take a picture, and please share and post onto our website. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, at this time, Ms. Barlow, did you have a report from the
Yes,
city?
actually, I have a few items, Madam Mayor. I hope you'll indulge me just a little bit. First, I would like to say that with respect to Domestic Violence Month, I served on the board of a domestic violence shelter for many, many years. I'm still a big supporter of it. And I do want to reiterate, my best friend, when I was younger, unfortunately, she passed several years ago. She was the maid of honor when I got married. She was a teenage domestic violence victim when she was still in school. And it took her many years to overcome the hurt and the harm. And I'm, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure she ever did overcome it all. But I think it's really, really important that we talk to our teenagers, boys and girls, about the importance of appropriate behavior with each other, and the fact that yelling and screaming and control and violence is not acceptable from either side. And I wish I could spare her what she went through, but at the time, there really weren't any programs for teenagers. So I'm really grateful that Human Options many of the other facilities and shelter programs are providing that now. And I really encourage people, if you see that kind of activity, if it's your friends, your teenagers, if you see that with your friends, please, please call someone to get help, because it doesn't get better. It only gets worse. So that's my PSA on that. Secondly, I want to say I'm really excited because look what I got in the mail today. So I got my ballot today, and I'm very, very excited about that. And I just want to point out that there are 5 Dropbox locations in Costa Mesa. 2 of them are drive-through, and 3 of them are walk-up and accessible. And they are available if you go to ocvote.com. You can find out where those Dropbox centers are and cast your ballot early in case you're worried about the mail. All right, so then I would like to say just one thing, reminder. I mentioned this earlier, but I do want to say it again because many of the people listening right now may not have heard it when I announced it at the beginning of the meeting. Councilmember Massour is not available, is not present tonight for a medical reason. So please, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. Nothing to be concerned about. He's fine. So with that, then I would like to finish. I was going to mention the census to Councilmember Chavez because that deadline was extended by a court order recently. So we do have until the end of the month. I hope people will please participate in the census. It's very, very important. But I was asked to give a brief report on the face mask mandate. And I think it's important for folks to understand a few things. First of all, this is not a Costa Mesa rule. We have a rule in Costa Mesa, but this is a statewide order enacted by the governor quite a long time ago, actually now. And there are mandatory requirements pursuant to the government code, the health and safety code. I could list them all, but it would bore you all to tears and make everyone fall asleep. Won't do that. If you'd like, you can probably check on our website and some of our social media because we've posted this information. It's also a county rule. The County of Orange has mandated masks. And even some of the folks in the county who I think were reluctant and even perhaps resistant at the beginning of this to insist on that and force that issue have made clear masks save lives. Masks are necessary. And also the Costa Mesa regulation. I want to, and now I'm going to take my little own PSA for just a quick second. For those of you who think this is an overreach, I hope you will understand from the breakout, the pandemic in the White House just recently, this is serious stuff. I happen to be, I have elderly parents. I have an elderly mother-in-law. I have a sister who's a first responder who has gotten COVID. It is a very serious disease. For those, fortunately, she didn't die, but it took her a while to get over it. And I want people to understand this is really serious. And we didn't do it willy-nilly. The law isn't willy-nilly. The rules aren't willy-nilly. The state and the county and the city, there's a reason for this. And I really hope that you will, even if you don't feel that you are at risk, please understand that you are dealing with children, first responders, caregivers, elderly. There are many, many people who you might unwittingly expose, who then will share it with their vulnerable family members. So if you have questions about this, I'm more than happy to take your emails and your calls. I won't even charge the city for it. You really need to understand that this is an important legal issue and an important healthcare issue. This is about public health. So with that, Madam Mayor, I thank you for the indulgence from the council for the time that you've given me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. We now have the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar will be considered routine, will be acted upon in one motion. There will not be a separate discussion or hearing on any of the items unless a council member, a staff member, or a member of the public requests that an item be pulled from the consent calendar. I understand that Councilmember Guinness would like to pull item number 8. Is there any other items, Ms. Green, that have been requested to be pulled from the consent calendar?
Madam Mayor, I have none.
Okay, thank you. So council, by show of hands in the participants window, can I get a motion for the consent calendar except for item number 8? Councilmember Mar.
I'll move to approve the balance.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
So
Reynolds.
before we vote, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
before you vote, I need to
Stevens.
recognize an abstention of mine to consent calendar number 5. I have a conflict on that matter.
Okay, I think under the new rules, you have to explain what the conflict is.
One of the lawyers for the law firm gave me more than 249 in the campaign.
Okay. Ms. Barlow, because it's a consent calendar voted on by all council members, is it okay for him to vote on the consent, or do we need to pull that item?
We do not need to pull that item, Madam Mayor. With that abstention, that will be noted. The entire council can vote on the consent calendar.
Okay. Just want to make sure I know what items, because no one alerted me. Hold on. Oh, okay. Ms. Green, just to double check. Never mind. I'm good. Okay, call for the question by voice vote, Ms. Green.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Yes.
Councilmember Mar?
Yes.
Councilmember Guinness?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Foley?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, item number 8, which is, I'll let Ms. Green read the title.
Number 8 is resolution adopting the fiscal year 2020-2021 statement of investment policy.
Thank you. And we will turn it over to Ms. Molina, who gave a presentation to our 5-pack committee. And go ahead, Ms. Molina.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. King, the Assistant Finance Director, to present to you this item tonight. Jennifer?
Ms. King, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and member of the City Councils. And I will share my screen if you can give me just a couple seconds.
No worries.
Can you see my screen okay? Can you
Yes,
see?
I can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The item for your consideration tonight is the adoption of the city's fiscal year 2021 investment policy. And one second, let me. The city's investment policies framework is derived from the California Government Code, starting in section 53-600. On this slide is an excerpt from that section of the code, which states the fiduciary responsibilities when investing public funds. Specifically, trustees of public funds should exercise care, skill, and prudence to safeguard public assets and maintain liquidity needs. These principles are summarizing into 3 investment objectives for the policy in order of importance. Number 1 is safety. Number 2 is liquidity. And finally, yield for the portfolio. These guidelines ensures city assets are being invested prudently, allowing the city to meet its obligations while earning the highest possible yield under authorized investments set forth in the policy. On this slide, we listed 4 permitted investments that make up majority of the city's investment portfolio. They are U.S. Treasury bonds, federal agency enterprise securities, local agency investment funds, which is commonly referred to as LAIF, and corporate notes. Staff and the city's contract investment advisor, Chandler Asset Investment, have reviewed the current policy provisions against changes in California government code and guidelines from various professional treasurers associations. And we determined that the current policy is in compliance with these guidelines. Therefore, staff is recommending the City Council re-adopt the investment policy without changes. And this recommendation was also reviewed by FIPAC at its meeting on September 9th. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. King. Councilmember Guinness, since you pulled this item, did you have any questions?
Basically, I just wanted to affirm that there were no changes, because the staff report indicated there were no changes from the previous year, but there was something in the resolution, which I'm trying to find out, which it didn't say there were, but it was somewhat ambiguous. And I just wanted to make sure of that, because I think right now we're pretty secure. And especially when things are in a state of flux, you definitely don't want to be changing any of your basic policies.
Ms. King, did you want to go ahead and give Councilmember Guinness an update? We did discuss this at the FIPAC meeting, and and I believe FIPAC, there's an official recommendation. So did you want to go ahead and address that?
Yes, the FIPAC was approved the staff's recommendation to have no changes to the policy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reynolds, you have your hand raised. No, that's from earlier. Okay. All right, I'll open this item up for public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? If you do, please raise your hand in the participants window or press *9 on your cell phone or your landline, and then press *6 to be able to speak and to be unmuted. Oh, wait a minute. Anyone wishing to speak to this item? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Council, I'm going to raise your hand.
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second? Councilmember Reynolds.
Second.
Okay, call for the question by voice vote.
Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gannis,
Yes.
Councilmember Marr,
Yes.
Councilmember Reynolds,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Foley.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, we have no old business items tonight and 2 new business items. Ms. Green, will you please read the title for business item number 1?
Community Outreach Plan for the 2021-2029 Housing Element Update. Presentation by Ms. Ashabi, Principal Planner.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'll be giving the presentation this evening. If you'll give me a moment to share my screen.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Mayor and members of the City Council, the item before you this evening is the Community Outreach Plan for the 2021 to 2029 Housing Element Update. In the way of background, on November 5th, 2019, the City Council authorized staff to submit a grant application for SB2 funds, which included $155,000 to fund the Housing Element Update. On July 21st, 2020, the Council accepted the SB2 funds and approved a contract with Kimley Horn in an amount consistent with that SB2 grant award amount. At that time, The City Council also authorized the City Manager to execute any future amendments to the Kimley-Horn Agreement, including a potential increase in compensation if additional grant funds became available. The housing element scope of work currently includes community outreach with approximately $13,000 initially budgeted to that task. The scope was approved with the intention of augmenting that budget to include a more extensive community outreach effort once additional grant funding sources were identified. With that in mind, at its July 21st meeting, Council requested staff return with a community outreach plan and also provided feedback and direction as to its expected components. City Council provided direction on July 21st, including that the city should allocate additional funding toward the community outreach plan, that the housing element should include a robust outreach plan that is engaging and equitable and includes all segments of Costa Mesa residents, that workshops should be scheduled and conducted at each of the 6 City Council districts, that outreach should engage both English and Spanish-speaking populations. Outreach should engage stakeholders and Costa Mesa businesses, including Opportunity Zone properties. And lastly, that outreach should include visioning plans with graphics and digital models for major corridors to the extent possible. Following the July 21st meeting, staff engaged Kimley-Horn to kick off the update process and requested an expanded outreach plan responsive to the City Council's requests. In the meantime, the city was awarded the Local Early Action Planning or LEAP grant funding in the amount of $500,000 with $55,000 earmarked to augment the housing element budget. Acceptance of the LEAP grant was the subject of a separate item on tonight's council agenda. The proposed community outreach plan presented this evening proposes a multi-layered outreach strategy that combines traditional outreach methods with a creative and targeted engagement approach specifically designed to engage a wide representation of all segments of the Costa Mesa community. Major components of the proposed outreach effort include the following. First, community town halls. Staff will initiate the housing element process with citywide community town hall meetings held virtually and conducted by staff and Kimley-Horn experts. The purpose of those meetings is to introduce the process, the community survey, and promote awareness of the variety of opportunities available for public input throughout the process. District-specific workshops will also be held to allow for a more detailed discussion of the unique issues and opportunities within each district. Stakeholders workshops will also be held as well to solicit feedback from stakeholders groups such as community organizations, major landowners, home builders, affordable housing developers and advocates, local business organizations, and others. And lastly, targeted breakout sessions will be held and will focus on harder to reach segments of the community and groups within specific geographic focus areas. Throughout the update process, outreach materials, including community online surveys, informational fact sheets, and short informational videos will be produced throughout the process and posted online. Outreach materials will be provided in English and Spanish, and methods for Spanish-speaking engagement will be incorporated into each event. In addition, Spanish language breakout groups will be incorporated into workshops when needed. Throughout the process, the housing element team will share information via online community engagement, social media, community sharing platforms, as well as print materials placed at strategic neighborhood locations. And staff will connect with community groups and neighborhood leaders as well to engage those harder to reach communities. This outreach strategy integrates traditional best practices with a more creative and targeted outreach effort to ensure that all segments of the Costa Mesa community are engaged in this important process. This slide shows the general timeline for community outreach. Although outreach occurs throughout the housing element update process, some of the more focused outreach efforts occur in late October, November, and December during the initial phase of the project, and then again in March and April, where the focus will be the draft housing element and targeted discussions and stakeholders meetings. And of course, throughout the process, as mentioned, a number of community surveys will be used, informational fact sheets and short informational videos will be produced, and informational updates will be pushed out through the city's website as well as our other media outlets. Regarding the schedule, this exhibit shows a general representation of the overall housing element timeline and how community outreach efforts fit into the overall process. Specifically, should the council approve the community outreach plan this evening, our first step is to host the first citywide community town hall in late October, early November. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, these community meetings will be held virtually. In November and potentially into December, outreach would continue with the district-specific meetings and our first round of targeted focus sessions and stakeholders meetings. In January and February, staff anticipates holding the first City Council study session, both to present the feedback we heard from the community, and second, to get some initial policy feedback and direction from the council where necessary. As discussed in the staff report, staff recommends that these study sessions include the Planning Commission so that staff is able to receive integrated feedback and direction from both bodies. In March and April, the second round of focused outreach would occur, including a second community town hall meeting and additional targeted focus sessions and stakeholders meetings focused on discussion of the first draft of the housing element. Around this time, staff anticipates holding the second study session with City Council and the Planning Commission as directed, focusing on the draft housing element update. Again, in May, June, and July, Kimley Horn will incorporate the feedback we heard during our outreach efforts and finalize a draft housing element to submit to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, for review. Finally, in August and September, city staff, along with the Kimley Horn team, will respond to HCD comments and prepare the final housing element for public hearings. Public hearings will be held with the Planning Commission, who will provide a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council itself will have final approval authority over the housing element. The city is required to submit an adopted housing element to the state by October 2021. Regarding funding for the plan and the housing element update in general, $155,000 in SB2 grant funds have already been appropriated to the housing element update. The estimated cost of the proposed outreach plan is approximately $77,000 in additional funds for a total cost of $232,000 for the housing element contract overall. The city has recently been awarded the LEAP grant in the amount of $500,000 with $55,000 earmarked for the housing element, bringing the total earmarked for the housing element contract to $210,000. If the City Council approves the proposed outreach plan, our next step will be to obtain a final cost proposal from Kimley Horn, to submit a request to the state to adjust the LEAP grant award amount earmarked for the housing element, and then to amend Kimley Horn's contract to incorporate the augmented community outreach plan. With that, staff recommends that the City Council provide feedback and approve a community outreach plan for the housing element update and authorize the city manager to approve an amendment to the Kimley Horn contract for the expanded outreach effort. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have Minu Ashavi, our principal planner, and Nick Chen, our project manager for Kimley Horn, and his team on the line as well to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lee. Council, if you have a question, could you please raise your hand in the window? Councilmember Marr, then Councilmember Guinness.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Lee. That was really helpful. For those interested, the staff report actually included an attachment that went through all of the questions that we asked during the last couple of meetings and how staff was addressing them. And so I appreciate that when we talk up here, people take that into consideration, and it's used to shape policy. I imagine that. Anyway, so thanks for taking all of our comments to heart. I think one of the things I'm concerned about as we're doing all of this outreach, how are we're taking in information from the public, but there also needs to be sort of an education element as we go along. Not everyone's going to be familiar with what affordable housing means and our requirements for RENA. We know that people respond differently if we say affordable housing versus workforce housing. You know, it's one thing to put dots where you want high density to go, but understanding the restrictions associated with that, where we can and cannot say that we might build housing in the future, the impact of an inclusionary housing ordinance in the future. So how can we make sure, without just further burdening staff, that we are providing a forum in which we're getting feedback, but we're also making sure that it's informed and not just kind of gut reaction, don't put houses here?
Sure. So we've incorporated the idea of that feedback in a number of different ways into the outreach plan. The first way is that I think that just even beginning with our first step of the town hall meetings, a portion of that will be an educational and informational component about the process and the expectations for our RENA numbers and the state's requirements. So just even starting from the first step, we need to start having those conversations with the community. And the second part of that is one of the main points of having these targeted smaller group sessions, these stakeholders meetings that are specific to certain groups that have a certain role in the housing development process, is to provide an opportunity to have those more detailed discussions that you wouldn't be able to have in perhaps a PowerPoint presentation where it's just more of a one-way communication. So I do expect that as part of those targeted sessions, we will have an educational component, especially when we're talking about specific issues. If we have focus group sessions on specific issues or specific areas of the city, I expect that there will be an informational component to that interaction. And then lastly, in our outreach materials, I think one of the main focuses of our outreach materials and the information that we push out to the community via the website and other media outlets is in part those short informational videos that deal with specific issues, the informational fact sheets that we intend to deal with specific issues that come up over the course of the conversation with the community. So that's our intention. I'm happy to provide some additional details as well.
No, I think that's really helpful. I just want to make sure that that's something that we're including, because I also think that our number is so big that in some cases, like, it's just going to be, well, it's insurmountable. I don't know where you're going to put 12,000 units, right? Like, so I think breaking those numbers down, I do like the idea of sort of district specific input so that you can get more focused groups and more focused neighborhoods. To that end, I wonder if alleviating some of that budget shortfall might come down to the fact that we can do breakout rooms in Zoom, and a lot of this is probably going to be over Zoom. And so rather than having 6 separate meetings, maybe we can do 2 at a time or 3 districts at a time and throw everyone in a different Zoom room. And then just to remind me, where are we at with the inclusionary housing ordinance?
Sure. So at the study session regarding housing that was held with the council earlier this year, there was an interest expressed to the staff pursuing an inclusionary housing ordinance. We've applied for grant funding as part of our LEAP grant application that the City Council approved and that we submitted, and have now been awarded the funds. So our next steps are to retain a consultant to do some of the technical analysis associated with that ordinance, and then to bring it forward to the Planning Commission and Council for discussion.
Okay, so imagine that will be a parallel effort. And so while not strictly housing element related, there may be, if that's coming alongside the housing element as one of our sort of policies by which we create more opportunity for affordable housing, then I could imagine that also being point of discussion potentially.
Correct. It's intended to be a parallel process.
Okay. And I didn't mean to imply that you don't normally listen to us. I was just kidding. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Guinness and then Reynolds.
Okay, when you have the district-specific workshops, would you envision those as being meetings with resident groups, or just any, residents and businesses in a district? How would that work?
So the way we're envisioning it is really a district-specific meeting open to residents of that district and also businesses. We anticipate that depending on how the conversation develops, there may be an opportunity to do breakout sessions even within each district. So that's how we're envisioning it at the moment.
Is there a way to do breakout sessions when you're doing a Zoom?
Yes.
There is.
We do it
cool.
on Thursdays at our Restore meeting. We do it off.
Okay. And then community organizations. What types of community organizations would you envision including?
The community organizations that we've thought about, even at this initial stage, can be faith-based organizations, can be nonprofit organizations that have ties to the housing development. So even our affordable housing groups that have expressed interest already in participating in the process. Really what we're looking to do is through this process, identify those local neighborhood groups or organizations that we can reach out to really reach segments of the community that we don't normally get to have conversations with through our normal channels. So that's the idea.
Okay, one of the things that I find really important is dealing with the ordinary residents, because this is basically their town. And as opposed to like an advocacy group or something like this that has a narrower focus, people, what is their vision for their neighborhood? And I want to make sure that we consider our existing residents as stakeholders, that they don't have to be an interest group to be a stakeholder, because basically the people with the biggest stake in our community are the people who put down their roots here and they're raising their kids here, and they probably have the biggest stake in the future of our community. So I just want to make sure that we don't consider them to not be a stakeholder group, because they very much are.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Reynolds.
That was quick, Councilmember Guinness. Usually I was prepared for a lot more questions from you. Okay. So thank you to those who asked questions already. I had similar comments. One, are questions on the education piece, and a strategy that I've learned is really important and effective as part of that. Of course, the purpose of this process is to collect information from our residents, right? The people who live in the city, who own the city. And I think it's important, what I've learned is important as part of that data collection process, especially when we're talking about housing, is that we're talking about, neighborhood character, key assets, the values of communities, how people want to experience their communities, as opposed to, what level of density is acceptable to you, or like, what do you want the FAR to be, right? I don't even know exactly how to conceptualize those things. So how we phrase those conversations, I think, is really important. And I know Mr. Chen is listening in, and I'm sure that this is a common practice among Kimberly Horn. So I think there's an opportunity to, build education in, but it's how we phrase those conversations that'll be really important. And I really appreciate the efforts here to provide a variety of opportunities to connect with residents across the city. It did have a similar kind of comment and question that Councilmember Marr did about the district-specific meetings. So I do think it's really important to hear about those, assets and values and what a community, sort of the character of a neighborhood, to have those sort of more geographically centered. We all know, West Side, East Side, Mesa Verde, they're all sort of different areas in the community. And of course there are shared values, but they're also pretty distinct communities. But I worry that just like one workshop per district is limiting in a number of ways. One, it only gives a resident in each district one opportunity to participate, right? So if that doesn't work with their schedule, tough luck, right? So, and then a friend had made a really good comment that I hadn't thought of, saying it's actually really important to, of course, get that sort of neighborhood-specific feedback, but it's really valuable for everyone in the city to hear that feedback from other neighborhoods as well, right? To learn about, you know, possibly different perspectives of how people do and want to experience the city. So going back to Councilmember Maher's suggestion, I would support maybe instead of 6 district-specific workshops, several citywide workshops at different times of day, different days of week, to provide different opportunities to participate for different people's schedules, but with maybe district-specific or sort of geographic-specific breakout, so people can be part of a citywide meeting, break out and talk with people in their neighborhood, and then come back together and hear, you know, not only their own report out, but hear the report outs of the other areas in the neighborhood. And that might be an opportunity to both be more efficient and create more opportunities for residents to participate. I think this was in there. I didn't see it explicitly stated, so I wanted to make sure that any sort of virtual town halls are recorded and like posted on a dedicated website. I think that saves you also from, or your team from having to repeat things over and over. And let's see. Oh, one thing I didn't see in the plan that I think is really important. So I know we're going to have lots of using our award-winning social media and news team to get information out, right? I didn't see any plan to do any mailers. And the reason that stood out to me, is that correct? There's no mailers as part of the current proposal? Okay.
Mailers not included.
Yeah, great. So, or not great. I think we should, and for a couple of reasons. So I work at a firm that does a lot of market and customer research, and I spoke to some of my colleagues in this area, and it's interesting. They've been working for decades, so they've seen sort of the original like mail out surveys, and they've gone through the evolution of online surveys, and the research now shows that actually mailing out is earning again the most effective response rates. They call it mail push to web. So you mail something out in people's mailboxes, which gives them sort of a link to an online survey to go and participate. And that's been like much more effective in getting people to participate. And we can probably all understand why, right? There's so much email coming through our boxes. It's really hard to filter out what's important. So I would maybe if we can do these sort of mixed online meetings instead of 6 district-specific meetings, maybe there's opportunity to create some room in the budget for mailers. Another urban planning professional who's led similar workshops mentioned that they always ask, how did people hear about the workshops that they're attending? And she said in recent, I think, general plan updates, 95% of their participants said that they learned about the workshop through a mailer. So the goal here, right, is to get as much participation as possible and really be effective in that outreach. So I think it's really, really important to get a mailer out there. And if we have all these workshops sort of scheduled ahead of time, a website, getting all that information out there in one place, I think will be an important part of this plan. Question on that issue of effectiveness, right? I appreciated commentary in the plan about, needing the plan to be flexible to adapt to different situations and feedback. If the goal here, again, is to make sure that the feedback and engagement we're getting is representative, how do we track that throughout the process to know like what's working and what groups we are effectively engaging and who we might still be missing and need to, adjust our outreach to capture?
Sure. So I can have Nick Chen, our project manager, weigh in a little bit on this, but the reason that we've really structured the outreach plan the way that we have with this sort of multi-layered iterative process is to allow us to identify groups that we feel like maybe we haven't really spoken to through this process, and then to do some targeted focus group meetings that specifically that specifically look to that segment of the community to engage and participate. So that's our intention with this multi-layered approach. Mr. Chen, would you like to weigh in as well?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Lee. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. This is Nick Chen with Kimley Horn. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. So I agree with everything Ms. Lee said regarding the targeted focus groups. I think just to put a little bit of emphasis on one of the ways that we can make sure that we're hitting as many parts of the community as possible is to ask some of the questions that Councilmember Reynolds talked about. To ask, when we have these meetings, where are people coming from? How did they hear about the meeting? This will really help give us some insight into the types of outreach efforts that we're doing, the people who are able to make it to our workshops, whether holding workshops at different times of the day, at different days of the week, weekends, and virtual online outreach methods as well, whether these are going to be more effective. And we talked about having to have a flexible strategy, and I think this accommodates a lot of the flexibility that we're going to need to have to accommodate whether we're going to be able to have meetings in person, whether we're going to have them virtually. We're going to have to do a little bit on the fly, but this plan really lays out a good structure to keep us honest, to keep us making sure that we're engaged in the community in a way that's meaningful and effective. And what I wanted to mention a little bit earlier was that we're having a dialogue with the community. So it's giving information, it's getting information back, and it's having a back and forth. It's not just one side talking. So I think this plan does a lot of that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it sounds like this is what your plan is. What I would hope to see is that we can have some kind of comparison of what you develop in the community profile, percent of renters, percent of seniors, population by different neighborhood in the community, that we can show that our engagement through these different methods sort of shows a similar disposition of participation, so that we know we didn't miss a whole population of people. I think that's it. I didn't hear a mention of didn't see a mention of coordination with schools. I imagine that's a pretty effective way to outreach, especially we know housing for families with kids is really critical and difficult. I assume that that's intended to be included. Is that correct?
That's correct. During these times, we'll have to be a little creative with how we interact with schools. Sometimes when you send a flyer home with the young kids, they'll make sure and take it home. If you send a flyer home with the high school kids, maybe not. So we'll be looking into how we can participate with schools and use them partially to get feedback, but also to disseminate information.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm really excited about this plan. It looks like we're set up with a really good plan here, and I'm excited to see the execution. Thanks.
Okay, I have a couple questions. So can you put up the timeline that you have? I'm just wondering why we need to start in October and November, and why we can't push to January to give us a little bit of lead time to get organized. Maybe then COVID will be less impactful in our community and we could have better interactions with the community. That's my biggest concern about the timeline, is that by starting now, we're limited to Zoom. And while I think there is certainly a role for Zoom to play to be able to get more people involved, I don't think that it is the best way for us to do what I think is some of the most important work that this council is going to be doing over the next several years. And so I'm concerned that we're doing it in October, November. It's COVID, it's Thanksgiving, kids back to school, everyone's all like distracted. It feels like we should push the whole timeline to January and start in January. That still gives us plenty of time to make the October deadline, from what I can see. So is there any reason why we can't push the schedule to January to give us a little more time to get organized, a little more time to kind of talk about, what are these
all these targets look like, and then also to give people an opportunity to participate in a more meaningful way? I don't know who could answer that question for me. Ms. Lee?
Sure. Mayor, the reason that we have the schedule outlined as it is, and this is a generalized schedule, there will certainly be a little bit of flexibility here, both to address just the realities of the fact that we're in this pandemic and how do we reach out to communities during these times. We will consider holidays and we'll flex any intentions that we had for meetings to ensure we're not, reaching out to the community at a very, very inconvenient time.
But is there any reason why we can't push it to January?
Sure, it has to do primarily with the number of milestones that we need to hit within this very short period of time, and also the fact that we want to give a prolonged opportunity for outreach at the beginning, and also when we have a draft housing element. If we started in January, we would really need to truncate that outreach effort to a much shorter period of time. We can do that. I just think that maybe it would be best to have multiple opportunities for engagement and outreach, and that way we make sure that we provide enough opportunities to hit everyone.
So I guess I'm confused because you said that we have to submit it in October of 2021, but you got on the timeline, our last meeting is in April. So isn't it possible for us to move to January and then we're just bumping everything by 3 months and you'll still hit, May, June, July, we'll get it done in July. So you have plenty of time between July and October to finalize the plan. And I don't think you would lose any opportunity for engaging with the community or multiple meetings. In fact, you would probably have more involvement because this is just a really difficult time. I mean, it's very, very, very hard to get people to want to come onto a call right now because many people for work, like you, are on Zoom calls all day long, and the last thing they want to do is spend their evening on a Zoom call. And so my concern is that we're not going to actually get as many people. We're going to get the people that are, always involved, but we're not going to reach out to the greater community by doing it in this time period. And I don't think it hurts anything. I guess I'm just not understanding the timeline.
Hi, Madam Mayor, this is
a couple of things. I think first, I had this exact conversation with our city manager earlier about this and the way that it was presented. So we're actually engaging with the city council at multiple periods. So the last point where we have scheduled here public hearings to adopt the housing element on the schedule is the August and September timeframe. So you're reading from left to right and then down and right to left. So so what we have here is the release.
Oh, you're right. My eyes didn't go left. That's a problem with the way it's presented. Sorry.
Correct. We thought afterwards that it might have been better to do left to right, but we didn't do that.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So I think the main point here is that we need time to be able to release the draft housing element out to the community and give a larger comment period. We need time, which is 60 days that's required to have the state review our draft housing element and give us feedback. And then we need time to still do the public hearing process. So
can I interrupt? So October 2021, what does that represent?
That represents the time period where we need to submit the final approved adopted housing element to the state.
Okay, so what is the deadline? Is there an identified deadline? What is it?
October 15th. Mr. Chen, do you want to confirm my dates?
And is that, I understand from my conversations with the mayor's group that it's possible that that date's going to be changed because, everybody's in the same boat with the pandemic. Have we heard that?
So it's my understanding that, of course, we are all in the same boat. That's for certain with other cities. And cities in general have been reaching out to the state and trying to understand where there's going to be some flexibility in that timeline, considering the pandemic and many, many other factors. My understanding is that the deadline is actually in the legislation, and so it would take a legislative change to change that deadline. Mr. Chen, have you heard any new information on this since we last spoke?
I have not. No, I agree with everything you said. The timeline is really to accommodate a few things, as Ms. Lee mentioned. There's the HCD review period, but probably more importantly, there's a around 45-day public draft review period where the community gets to review the plan and provide feedback after. So there are several kind of built-in review periods that need to be accommodated, and at this time there's no discussion, and I don't think we can make the assumption that the October 15th date will change.
Okay, so I still feel that it would be better to have more meetings in January and February than to try to cram meetings in October and November, because I don't think you're going to get quality involvement. I'm pretty confident that you will not. I mean, everyone's distracted. November, October, we've got elections going on at all levels, from the president all the way down. People are back to school. Kids are doing hybrid distance learning and learning in person, and families are working from home. I feel like this is so important. And if we're going to do it right, we really should push the community engagement, the bulk of it. Maybe you can begin to have some things, maybe town hall or whatever, but the bulk of it should be in January, February. That's just my opinion. And based on, I want us to get people involved that aren't always the ones coming to our city council meeting and telling us, the same thing every single time. So that's one thing. Secondly, I agree with Councilman Reynolds with regard to the school connection, and I didn't see that in the plan. And I think that's a critical component to any effective outreach program. And what I would recommend is that you activate the PTAs and you go to each school PTA and you try to have a presentation through the PTA and through what's called the DLAC, which is the Spanish language community meetings for the parents, because that's where you're going to have more involvement from the parents than if you just try to have a regular community meeting. They may or may not show up. But if you go to the PTA meeting, they're all going to be there at the PTA meeting, and it can be like you're a speaker. They often do that. That's my suggestion on how to be involved. And as far as like flyers, and I know you probably know this, but they don't let you pass out flyers anymore. So so we have to use this, and I know that well, I don't know if anybody on the call knows about this, but the school district has this program called Peach Jar, and that's the only way they'll let you pass out information to get out to the parents. And so that takes a little bit of effort. So we'll have to, I would get advance on that. You're not going to be able to do it like last minute because they're it's just difficult. That's my biggest concern with the plan overall, is that I feel like we're not going to get a true visioning input from our community because people aren't able to participate at this time. So I would encourage us to push it. And also, I didn't see, so we recently got accepted for the Bloomberg Innovation Initiative, and the application that we presented was all about the housing element and equity analysis, and I didn't see how that's incorporated into this program. And it's an excellent resource where they provide people who will do more community outreach. They'll provide Harvard fellows who can do data analysis and gathering of data and phoning people directly. I was just on a call listening to all the different ways that they can provide supports for cities who have been selected for the program, literally down to having
Harvard fellows, calling every single business owner as an example. So if there's a way that we can incorporate that resource into the plan, I think that would be beneficial to the city in a very, very big way. Because actually that was the application, was participating in this plan, but I didn't see that in the presentation. Okay, that's all I have. Are there any other questions? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, then Guinness, then Moore.
Yeah, I just want to echo a lot of the things that the mayor said. That popped out at me when I saw that the first kind of little node in the schedule was October and November. I know we're here in November. Sorry, are we in November? We're still in October, right? We're in October. So, I mean, with all the stuff that we're doing, we talked about the short-term rental ordinance. We got another meeting. Obviously, at least 3 of us are participating in elections. It's going to be hard, I think, to have a meaningful outreach in this month. And then next month, it might get a little better, but then we have, of course, the election. We're pushing into the holidays. The other thing that I thought about it, something that I don't think was brought up in terms of the districting, is if we're going to have meetings, and I know that Councilmember Reynolds suggested that we do something different, and she made some good points. If we're going to have meetings that are in districts, I do believe that we should wait to have those meetings after the council member in the district has been elected and has been sworn in, because the council member, it seems to me, should participate in those directly, and it should be after the election, so that they can appropriately bring back to the council the point of view of the people that live in their district. And that's if we do those district meetings, which is something that's part of the current plan, as I understand it in the staff report. So for those reasons, I tend to agree. And I'll take it one step further. I'll double down on what Mayor Foley said. Not only do we get the same people to participate, but it's like way worse than that. We get now at these Zoom meetings a fraction of the same people. Even the regulars don't show up anymore. So if we're, and I agree too that this is extremely important. And I'll make my own point here, extremely important thing that we're embarking on. And so I think as best we can, we should try to get it out of the Zoom environment to the extent we can do it in the orange. We've had some of these meetings that are outside. Obviously, the public health is paramount and needs to be, all compliance needs to occur. But people are moving outside and having meetings outside now. School is in session in many places, and we are just not, we should not kid ourselves. We're going to get no useful information on a Zoom call. Useless outreach, going through the motions if we do the Zoom call. The other thing I just say about it is, God, now I lost my train of thought. See, this is what happens in Zoom meetings. You lose your train of thought. But I just, it's such an important deal. I think we should push it, have it outside, have the representatives there, and maybe even flip it and do some other work or whatever. I know I was going to say, I knew if I'd ramble long enough, I'd figure it out, is this idea that when we put something down in paper and then we have our review sessions and the 45-day review sessions and so forth and so on. I think it's really important to get as much feedback as we can before we go pen to paper. This is kind of a measure twice, cut once situation, because In my professional experience, I see it all the time. If you start writing too early, if you start constructing the paragraphs, constructing the work, then you get kind of enamored with the words on the page. And once those words get on the page, it's really hard to get them off the page. So the outreach that we do at the front end has to be effective and has to be done in the best way. And I'm not hearing delaying it. And I got one question after all this is, so what's the sanction if can we apply for an extension? And what happens to us if we turn this thing in instead of on October 15th, if we turn it in on November 15th, does Costa Mesa, fall into the center of the earth? I mean, what happens to Costa Mesa if we take the time necessary and turn it in a month late?
Ms. Lee.
Mr. Chen, do you want to talk a little about repercussions?
Yes. So if the city does not locally adopt the housing element by October 15th, the city is potentially subject to fines, daily fines. They're potentially subject to basically, I guess I'll step back. What that means is the city would have an out of compliance housing element. The fifth cycle housing element, that is the current housing element, would not be applicable anymore as the period has ended, and the city would not have a compliant sixth cycle housing element. It'd be subject to potentially daily fines and loss of funding. And if the city continued on for a period of time, what has happened in some other jurisdictions who have lost their fifth cycle certification because of a lack of action to make a fifth cycle, they've lost or potentially have lost local control on some actions. So there are some potentially very dangerous consequences to not adopting by October 15th. Obviously, we haven't gone through that cycle yet, so we can't say for sure what will happen, but those are the potential options.
And a couple things is, in your experience, Nick, what's the likelihood of that happening? And have you seen it happen before? Substantial fines because somebody was a little late. And obviously, you've never seen the circumstance that we have right now with COVID and the Zoom call, because none of us have. And do you think that would have any effect on the likelihood of getting substantial fines? And then the last question, which I want to highlight, is what are the opportunities to actually file a formal request for extension because of the issues that have been raised by the council here?
So currently, there's not a formal method through SCAG to file for an extension or through HCD. That's if something becomes available, we will definitely talk to city staff and let everyone know. But currently, there is nothing in the works for that, and there's no discussion that would have that.
Ms. Barlow was raising her hand. Does she have an answer?
Yeah, I do actually. Although we haven't seen it in this cycle, I have seen other cities who have been out of compliance with their housing element, have been sued, and have been unable to grant any development permits of any kind based on existing state law. I think it also threatens our access to SB2 funding, which could be critical to maintain our budget and the needs of our infrastructure. So, as well as our homeless and low-income housing.
I thought you were going to answer the question about an extension.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was trying to weigh in before we got to the next question. We haven't seen an extension. I do think that if there is the possibility of that, then everyone will get it, and we can ask for it. But in the meantime, I think we should assume that we need to be timely with our housing element, because there are many, many legal issues if we are not.
Right, but it's 1 month is not gonna, it's not like we're refusing to do our housing element. And so under the circumstances, anyway, we should explore that, and then you can get back to us, because I do think that what I'm hearing is they are going to be talking about extending that time, just simply because everybody is in this same situation with regard to being able to, prepare the housing element program. I don't know. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, were you done? Okay. Councilor Mar, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I just think that this isn't a normal housing element, right? We've just had like 3 consecutive years of the legislature pushing housing. Maybe there's an extension, but like maybe there's not, because we need to get with the program and plan for more housing, which is something they've been planning. I think we've actually got a lot of issues too that HCD is going to weigh in on. Measure Y, for one, we're not going to go build 12,000 units with Measure Y as it stands right now. And so we need, if anything, we need to submit that thing early so we get a response back about how we're treating Measure Y in our plan, so that we can be in conformance as we move forward. And then lastly, like, this is a lot of work, and this is 12,000 units, and there's no greenfield site that we're going to point to and say, you know, congratulations, Mr. Sakioka, you get 12,000 units. We're going to have to evaluate site by site in many, many, many cases about whether or not we can potentially plan for housing. That means looking at existing retail sites that are currently sitting empty, retail sites that might be empty in the future, especially if COVID continues. Like, this is going to be the most involved, the most complicated, and the most important housing element the city has ever seen. And so I don't want to plan to kick the can down the road, and I don't want to plan on getting an extension. And frankly, we're already late, right? There's already cities, I don't want to put Mr. Chen on the spot, but like, we are late compared to most of the cities, probably because we were waiting for some of this grant funding so we can do this great outreach. But I don't think we have the luxury of waiting at all. I think even if, and I disagree with you, John, on the idea that just because it's a Zoom meeting, people who attend city council meetings have to sit through this, and that's why attendance is low, right? Like, I don't think by definition a Zoom meeting has lower attendance. If anything, I attend more stuff because I don't have to drive there at night. So I think we need to start. I mean, I'll leave it to the consultants to figure out where we start, and maybe that process drags a little bit, but we need to start. We cannot wait any longer.
Okay, Councilmember Chavez, then Guinness, then Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As everyone can tell, it's great working alongside smart and southern people. It's only great points, and I want to make my points as well. I'm actually in really strong agreement with Councilmember Marr. I think our governor has shown consistently that housing is one of the things he will focus on. And I think as we're facing the fact that we need to build so many homes in Costa Mesa, having a plan early on, I think we should get that started as soon as possible. If we have complaints and issues and concerns about the timing of the Zoom meetings or the meetings themselves, I think that could be addressed by the time it's due. I quite frankly don't want to put us in a position where we're going to be under the governor's eye and lose any leverage we may have. Because quite frankly, when it comes to conversation, if we're not at the table, we're going to be on the plate. And just furthermore, like, we're going to have to be doing a really intensive outreach to our community. Zoom is not ideal. I agree fully on that, but it is what we have to work with. And as we do outreach for community members, we need to make sure that they know what our options really are. Because like Mark said, we have very limited green space, if any at all. There's not much to say that we have a plot of land that we can just put all these housing elements to. We're going to have nuanced conversations with residents. We're going to have nuanced conversations about how we envision housing going in Costa Mesa, because the truth is, the Costa Mesa that I grew up in isn't the one that Member Guinness did, and it isn't the one that my kids will grow up in. So we have to be adapting to the future, and we need to be bringing people who are hesitant along in those conversations. So I would want us to get the plan done quickly. I am open to moving the meetings to post-election, like Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor Foley said, because that also is a big crunch with Christmas and Thanksgiving and such. But we should not be taking our time with this. This is a very important issue, and we need our residents to have the most time to share their input. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Guinness and Reynolds.
I have some concerns that for our housing element, one of the things that we're really looking at is equity and how are we serving all segments of our community. And by definition, Zoom is somewhat exclusionary. You have to have people who are savvy enough with the technology, people who can afford the technology. And it's not just a matter of, I don't want to sit in another Zoom meeting because I've been doing it all day. There are people who simply cannot participate in a Zoom meeting. Possibly they can do the call-in thing, but that's really kind of, it really inhibits participation. And admittedly, the penalties for not having a housing element in a timely manner have over time gotten actually meaningful. It used to be sort of like, oh, so you don't get it in there. And there were maybe 2 cities that had their building permit authority revoked, but that didn't really matter because they didn't want to build anything anyway. So it was sort of like, hey, they got their wish. But now there can be financial penalties. Worst case, the AG will give us a housing element that they think we ought to have, which would be really bad. So there are penalties. However, usually if you're making a good faith effort, it's not like, you were 2 days late and we're going to fine you. If you're making a good faith effort and you're really trying, they're not going to pound on you. And from the conversations I hear, there seems to be a movement to move things back, particularly because for our region, we had the draft housing numbers come out, but the needs assessment actually is still not technically finalized. So that creates all the more argument for changing things. I mean, you could say that our region goofed up, and so we've got to, deal with, lay in the bed we made. But I think there is a good chance it'll be pushed back. And I really do think the timing on the public participation would be better later. There are a lot of parts of the housing element that can be done prior to including the public. There's the policy part, which obviously we need to include the public, but there's a lot of data gathering, a lot of background material, possibly on housing constraints. We might want to have some meetings with housing providers on what they see as constraints. And I think they're more equipped to participate in a Zoom meeting. But for the public in general, I really think the Zoom is off-putting in it, and it will exclude many parts of our community. And the whole point on this is to include as much of our community as we possibly can. And so those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilman Reynolds?
Yes. So I love this conversation because it's demonstrating all of the different perspectives and about what type of outreach and engagement is convenient. And that's, I think, why one of the big pushes here in the plan presented showed many different modes of outreach. This is not just Zoom meetings. And so just want to keep that in mind. For some people, Zoom has become incredibly convenient. Certainly the expectation is that that's not our only mode of outreach and not how we expect everyone to participate. And I think to Councilmember Stevens, one of the points you made is not a lot of people are showing up for Zoom meetings. I think that's in part a result of the type of outreach that we're doing now on a lot of our meetings. And there's not a lot of notice a lot of times. For lots of activities, we need time to build up interest, to get people talking about things. So, because we're doing something new, because we're doing something that's very challenging, which is to engage populations in our community who have historically not been engaged, in some cases historically been pushed away. I think we need time to try these different modes of communication and be able to adapt. So I agree, we shouldn't be shooting to end the outreach process in November, but I do think that we should be starting soon and maybe spread it out over time so that we have the opportunity to learn what is effective, build interest, start conversations. And I would suggest engaging some of these stakeholder and community groups as soon as possible and talk to them about what are the best times and modes to engage the populations they already have strong networks and trust with. I'm very concerned. We hear a lot of feedback about city activities not giving enough time for feedback. And so I worry that compressing the outreach and pushing it back doesn't give us time to either adapt or respond to feedback that will probably be surprising and different from a lot of people. So because of those reasons, I would like to start sooner, but certainly agree with extending that outreach over time to be able, again, to adjust based on what we learn. And because now might be better for some people and later might be better for some people. I think we can get great feedback over Zoom. I've seen it. It depends on, you know, how you host the meeting, how you engage people in the meeting. But I certainly wouldn't expect it to be the best form of feedback for anybody. We also don't know that if by waiting, it's going to be any easier to engage people. Who knows what challenges lurk around the corner, right? This year has not been a year where things have gotten easier over time. And I just had a note here. You know, we talk about district-specific engagement. Again, I think it should really be more geographic. I mean, my district literally wraps around Councilmember Chavez's, right? Like, I don't think it makes sense to have a 4 and a 5, but maybe there's like a west side or 2 specific areas of the west side that make sense. Of course, council members and candidates for council should be listening in on those conversations, but those are conversations where we're trying to get input from the community. We've got plenty of time to give input on our own. Those are times that we should be at the meetings to listen. So I don't see the need to have a new council member in place to, you know, steer that meeting by any means. I certainly wouldn't want to do that in my district.
Okay.
Thanks. Just wanted to add those points.
Anything else? Okay, I have one question. So can you put up that plan again? So what exactly are we planning to do differently? Because I've heard it a couple times now, we're going to be doing these different activities to engage more people in a different way. But after many, many years of looking at plans to engage the community, this looks like a standard plan to me. It doesn't look different. It looks the same. So what exactly are we doing that's different? And maybe it's that there's been conversations outside of the meeting and so that people know what we're doing. I don't know, but it doesn't seem different to me. So what are we doing so that I can understand and feel better about it?
Sure. So a few things. In normal housing element cycles, it is very typical for a city to have essentially 2 public outreach meetings, one at the beginning and one in the middle where there's a draft plan, and it's essentially one community meeting. It's usually in person because we're not in the middle of a global pandemic.
And I'm sorry, I mean, what are we doing differently, not just as it relates to housing elements, but in terms of our outreach to the community regarding any item?
So the second part of that is, so one thing that was very important as we heard the council's feedback last time was that we didn't just do more of the same thing. So to have more of the same types of meetings. So what's different about this plan is that we have the traditional approach, but we've layered in also this idea of targeted focus meetings. So what that means is not doing a PowerPoint presentation that I then share, you know, on a Zoom webinar. It's reaching out to the faith-based groups in certain neighborhoods, the neighborhood leaders, the neighborhood groups in certain areas of the city that really have a more trust in the community that perhaps doesn't feel comfortable engaging with the city or hasn't in the past engaged with the city. So that's what's really different about it, is it's not us presenting information as we normally would in a presentation sort of format. It's really figuring out how a community wants to receive information and tailoring our approach to that community group. So that's what's different about it. I do also want to say that I hear the council's feedback on the timeline in particular. So we will take a look and kind of sharpen our pencils with the schedule and make adjustments wherever we can. We do have the bottom line deadline that I think is important for us to assume at this point that we need to meet. Certainly, if there's an extension, we're going to take advantage of that. Certainly, if there's any flexibility in the schedule, we're going to take that additional time to provide more opportunity for engagement. So this plan represents what we know today, and we've written in, we think, enough flexibility to be able to flex when things come up. This has been a year where a lot of things have come up, so we want to plan for that as well.
Who are the stakeholder groups that you're going to pick in October, November?
So the stakeholders groups were primarily, we have a running list going. It's essentially business groups like the Chamber of Commerce, it's affordable housing advocates like the Kennedy Commission, who submitted a letter for this evening's item. It's also just major landowners who may have the opportunity to develop housing in the future. It's those types of groups that have an interest in housing development. But those stakeholder groups are different than the targeted focus sessions that we're talking about, which are really intended to get to the meat of neighborhoods and neighborhood groups.
So who are in the targeted focus group sessions?
Those would be primarily smaller groups of residents that we feel that we can have a separate conversation with and a more focused conversation about their concerns. That have participated perhaps in some of the larger meetings, but based on our feedback or their geography or specific issues that are really focused on their neighborhood. The idea is we're talking with them in a breakout session that's a smaller group about specific issues or specific areas.
I'm just
residents.
Okay, I'm just really, and I'm just going to move on. I'm just struggling with understanding who's coming up with these lists and how are you determining them, and why pick one group over a different group, which, I mean, we don't even know what the groups are at this point. And I still just concerned about, you know, how are you going to get a resident group to have more intimate conversation right now? So anyway, I don't see, I'm not at all advocating that we delay, and that was misinterpreted as my comments. What I'm talking about is pushing the bulk of the community meetings, do all the work to keep getting everything set up. Maybe you meet with the business interests and the affordable housing groups and things like that in October, November, but then maybe push the more community resident specific meetings to January, February. That's all I'm suggesting, but there's no agreement obviously on that. And I guess we're just going to find out if anybody shows up. So I'm going to open the item up for public comment. Plus, I actually am concerned about it getting politicized also. I'd rather us get like true raw information instead of all the people trying to use the process for political gain. So we're going to open this item up for public comment. And let's see if we have anyone.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to state for the record that the Kennedy Commission did submit a letter, and it has been provided to council. It's on the city website and will be made part of the record.
Okay, wonderful. We got that letter. I read that letter. They had a lot of good points. The phone number ending in 891, you have the floor. You can press *6 to unmute. Hello.
All right. Hello, Madam Mayor. How are you?
I'm well.
Good. Yeah. So interesting conversation. I agree with the points you were making regarding Zoom, and that there are going to be people who won't be able to access Zoom because, you know, don't have computers or, you know, whatever, internet problems. And, you know, another thing that, of course, is an issue now is, you know, households that may not have many computers and kids are using them for homework and things like that. So I don't think we should do Zoom as the only outreach at all. I think there needs to be some kind of alternative, something else. And I didn't hear too much about how the meetings would sort of play out, but I think there should either be done bilingually or have other meetings as well that would be done in Spanish, since we, you know, going back to a council meeting of about 4 weeks ago, you know, the percentage of like Hispanic people in Costa Mesa is big. So there are going to be many people who, you know, have been neglected in the past in conversations like this, and could be again because of the language barrier. So I think it's important that that needs to happen. And the thing about sending things home as well is great. I mean, I don't follow social media, so I wouldn't catch, a meeting like this if I weren't listening to this city council meeting. So, so yeah, I think that, posters around the city, I don't know, something cheap like that, like we put out the posters for candidates, something like this about this, and English and Spanish, and maybe in a major, Hispanic, business center, put some there as well. Something, yeah, tabling outside of Hispanic business centers or something. So I hope that you will take this into consideration as well.
Thank you. Those are great ideas. Did you want to share your name with us so we know who's speaking?
Yeah, my name is Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate those suggestions. Okay, next speaker is Miss Esfahani.
Hello. I read the staff report, and I have to congratulate staff in the city on what looks to be a real ambitious effort to engage the community. I think it's great, and I appreciate all the comments by council members about the importance of this process. It is a huge moment for the city. The need for affordable housing is huge, as you're all aware. Arena numbers are huge, and so I guess what I'd like to touch upon is the need for education, which I think Councilman Member Marr brought up initially, is that there has to be context for the discussion that's going to happen. And I think that it would be really helpful for the community to learn a little bit about who needs affordable housing, who are the people who are housing poor, what nurses and retail workers and waitresses and teachers. And so just to give people a sense of who the community is, they're already here amongst us, but they're overburdened by housing needs. So that would be part of it. Who needs affordable housing? What does affordable housing look like? Maybe there could be videos showing some of the beautiful affordable housing complexes in the city of Irvine, or other cities in Orange County. So people are not afraid of it and see it as they can understand it will be a benefit to the community. So I just kind of want to put that out there, that it might be helpful to think in those terms, particularly in the springtime when, maybe the second level of the public comments are coming online, because it'll take some time to develop this sort of, information. And our affordable housing group would be happy to participate with the city in coming up with some of this information, and maybe some stories from people in the community who need housing. So anyway, thank you for listening, and we look forward to working with the city on this really exciting process.
Thank you. Those are good suggestions. Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone else's hand raised. So if you would like to speak to this item, please raise your hand in the participants window or press *9 on your telephone. Okay, one more. Art Inspirin. Art Inspirin. You can press *9 on your phone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. This is Art Goddard. I've listened to the conversation here, and I promise whatever you do for this housing element discussion with the public, I will participate in it, and hope not to be perceived as one of the people that comes to all the meetings and says the same old thing over and over again. That's all I have to say for now, but very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Thanks for all you do. Okay, let's see. There's no one else in the participants window. I'll do one last call. If you'd like to raise your hand in the participants window or press *9 to be called on to speak to this item, please do so now. Okay, no further hands raised, so we'll close public comment and we'll ask for council. If you would like to make a motion, please raise your hand. Anyone? No one wants to make a motion? Councilmember Mar.
Sorry, I couldn't click fast enough. I kept closing the Anyway, I'll move to approve the item with 2 additional requests. One that we get a more detailed schedule back. It can be as a receive and file, but just so that we understand a little bit better what's going to happen. We kind of had all those meetings lumped into October/November, so I'm sure Kinley Horn is building a more detailed schedule, so it'd be helpful for us to see that. And then the second is and I think the mayor was kind of getting at this, and Councilmember Reynolds mentioned it as well, like maybe just a little bit more detail about what steps and what methodology we're going to go through to engage people. I mean, I think while I was sitting here, I was getting texts from people about you could do a text outreach campaign and let people know that there was a meeting. You could, there's Councilmember Reynolds mentioned flyers that then had a way of signing up for an online meeting. We can do all kinds of cool things with QR codes. So it'd be nice to see, and maybe these things are already in the works, but sort of 3 or 4 out of the box. How are we going to get people, especially if it has to be online meetings because of COVID? How are we going to get people engaged rather than just putting it on the city website and hoping someone attends the meeting? So I think there's a lot of smart people in your office and at Kinley Horn, and so if we could just know that there's a couple of ideas in the works, I think that would make a lot of us feel better that we're actually going to get participation. So that was a very long-winded motion, but I can make it shorter if you want.
Great. No, that sounds good. Before we get, is there a second? Councilmember Reynolds?
Second.
Okay. Before we move on to further comment, Ms. Lee or Ms. Farrell Harrison, do you need any further direction than that? Does that kick you off?
No, I think we've heard that there's definitely a very strong interest in ensuring a lot of community participation at opportune times that allows for the greatest amount of participation in many different formats through different modes of communication. So we'll definitely keep that at the forefront. I do think that we have a bit of a conundrum between COVID, just the holiday season coming up, yet having to meet the deadline and not want to miss the deadline and put ourselves in a difficult position. So, we'll work with the consultants to figure out what could be front loaded, what could be presented at just the right time, try to get as much participation as possible, but still with the end goal of meeting the October 15th deadline. And so, and we'll look at mailers and some of the other suggestions that have been mentioned. And so what I'm hearing is more outreach, faster, but on time. So we'll try to do it.
Sounds about par for the course with that.
Councilmember Reynolds, did you want to add anything?
I last thought, kind of building on the conversations ahead of our decisions on the shelter, the temporary shelter. There was at least multiple months, and I think in parallel with that process, sort of education campaign creating that context. So thinking about Ms. Estahani's comments, I was remembering the sort of regular communication about, and at that point, homelessness, who are people experiencing homelessness, what do we know about different solutions? What might the city do and what does the city need to do? So I think an education campaign like that could be very helpful to launch, and I think throughout the process, where that education includes the different opportunities to participate. I do think that as soon as possible, we should start engaging the different community groups, groups that already have sort of established ties in the community. We've heard a lot of them mentioned today, the PTA leaders. I think a lot of church groups have strong connections already, certainly Trellis. There's a lot of sort of community organizing groups. And I would solicit feedback from those groups too on what they have found to be the most effective ways to connect throughout the community, and I think that can help shape the plan. But I'm really excited about this, and I just sort of remind us all that it's not necessarily about more; it's about effectiveness. So again, throughout the process, I'll really be looking at how are we demonstrating that we are actually reaching more people. I agree that if after 6, big meetings, it's the same 10 people at all 6 meetings, we've failed. So it's a strategic, targeted effort, and we need to have the time to learn and adapt. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yeah, I support the motion, but as we were having that discussion, which I thought was really good, because we don't have to agree on everything, and I respect everybody's points of view, but it seemed to me like there was 3 and 3-ish that said we need to delay an appropriate period of time our community outreach and town hall type meetings. So I know that that's part of the motion in the sense that you're saying we're going to break it down and have a more detailed schedule, but I hope that that direction came through, and I support the meetings. I support the motion, but I think we need to pay attention to that and also pivot if Zoom meetings are going down in flames, then we just do something else. This is too important for us to. I'm not suggesting that anybody said this or even intimated this, but to kind of just check the box and say we've gone through it. I mean, we're all committed to this and doing it right and getting as much and varied input from every part of the community, whether they have Zoom or not.
Agreed. Okay, Councilmember Guinness.
Well, I will support the motion, but it's with the understanding that it's approval in concept, that there are some finer points, for example, the specific dates and so forth, that will have some degree of flexibility. I think that was your intention when you asked for more detail. Was that the intention of the motion?
Councilor Marr?
Yeah, I think that I think it's twofold. I think that one, we're looking at it like all that stuff is lumped in October and November, but we're not fully understanding what happens in October versus what happens in November.
Yeah.
And then I think with that level of detail, that might also start saying, oh, well, you know what, the last week of November is Thanksgiving, so if we slide that to the first week of December, it's kind of a wash, we're all good. But I'm not giving direction to start pushing things down the line.
Yeah, but staff will take to heart our discussion that we had.
I've seen Jennifer nod a lot, so I'm sure she will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll also be supporting the motion. I think it's fair for staff to have a bit more time to prepare for us what they think the final plan should be. And I think, this is going to be a really important first step for Costa Mesa. So I think the more information we can give the public and ourselves on the dais or virtual dais, the better.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'll be supporting the motion. Everyone heard all my concerns. One other issue I want to raise and make sure that we're outreaching to our Vietnamese and our Pacific Islander community. We have about, roughly 7,000 residents in the city that would fall into that category. And they predominantly tend to live in certain neighborhoods. And so I think that to the extent that we can outreach into those demographics, I think that I didn't hear a plan for that. So that would be important. And then we have a Marshall Islander community that's over in our neighborhood, my neighborhood in District 3. So then also this just goes to, maybe this is what Councilor Marr is addressing, I'm not sure, but to the extent that the council can be informed before the public is informed, what is it that we're presenting at these meetings? We're going to have a meeting, but what are we presenting? what is the information we're gathering? It would be nice if we would know that beforehand so that we could, we could engage. And if there's other things that we think we need to include, then maybe we could suggest. I don't know. It's hard for me to understand how this is all going to work. And maybe it's because we're in this kind of a space where normally, we'd go into a room and you could put things up on the wall and you could do a presentation and you can put people in little groups and you could, do a lot more than you can how we're going to be able to do it. So I'm still struggling with how are we starting the whole thing in the first place? What are we saying to people? What are we asking people? Because I think that's a very important piece of this. And I agree with Ms. Esfahani that if we don't do some form of education, you can't just expect people to show up to a meeting and say, people who are just regular people, not advocates, but just come to a meeting and say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I think we should plan for this neighborhood. So trying to understand what that looks like, I think would be very helpful to the council. And certainly also getting feedback. I know that the SCAG right now, there's an effort that is afoot to appeal the SCAG, the numbers that were provided. So to the extent that the council can continue to get regular updates about that process and where we are in that process, I think that would be helpful. Because I'm just hearing about it, without it being a formal information provided to us. And so, yeah, that's my biggest concern. And then I did have a question. So it's October 6th, and we're not starting a meeting tomorrow. So in terms of the October timeframe, are you, to address Councilman Reynolds' concern that people aren't getting enough notice, how are you going to have a meeting this month, a community meeting? Do we have anything planned and scheduled already?
Mayor, council members, we wanted to wait for direction from this group before we went forward with any specific outreach plans. Our intention has always been to kind of use these months as guidelines. So there's definitely flexibility. We've always talked about sort of a late October or early November type of time frame for the first meeting. Considering where we are today, I'll be connecting with our city manager's office and really nail down some specific dates, and we'll share those with council.
Okay, sounds good. I would encourage you to push that to mid-November if you actually want people to engage. Okay, call for the question.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Yes. Got to. Yep.
Councilmember Moore? Yes. Councilmember Gannis?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Foley?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
And if we want to ask questions, or who do we direct those to? Mr. Chen or who?
Direct those questions to me and I'll be happy to coordinate from there.
Okay. Okay. Next item of business is new business, item number 2.
Thank you. Subrecipient agreements for program administration of a community development block grant coronavirus rental assistance program. Presentation by Mr. Neiman, Senior Management Analyst.
Okay, Mr. Neiman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Good evening, also to staff and our guests who are joining us online. For your consideration this evening is a recommendation from staff to authorize the city manager to execute 2 subrecipient agreements for 2 separate nonprofit organizations to administer the city's CDBG COVID Emergency Rental Assistance Program. I'm going to go ahead and put up a presentation for you. to walk you through a little bit of the program. Go ahead and share the screen here, excuse me. Okay, a little bit of background to accompany your staff report and respective attachments. On March 27th of this year, President Trump signed the CARES Act, which authorized $5 billion in CDBG funding, $2 billion of which was specifically earmarked for cities that have CDBG entitlement programs like Costa Mesa. And afterwards, on April 2nd, the Department of Housing and Urban Development awarded the city, or notified the city rather, of its allocation, round one allocation of CDBG COVID funding to the tune of $668,658. Subsequently thereafter, you may recall on June 16th, initiating a public hearing to substantially amend the city's CDBG Community Action Plan and Citizen Participation Plans, which was a requirement to essentially accept and use that $668,000 of funding. And as part of that process, provided the assistance be specifically used for public service programs that will primarily benefit homeless services and prevention. Fast forward throughout the summer, we've heard, we were hearing a lot from our nonprofit partners, as well as our Network for Homeless Solutions outreach team. Their ears were to the street, and they were talking about rental assistance becoming even a greater concern to a lot of our members in our community, and apparently ramping out throughout the state, as evidenced by the legislature moving quickly to pass AB 3088, which was a bill that prohibits evictions for non-payment of rent for issues due to COVID, that dated back from March 2020 to January 31st of next year. So following all that feedback, staff issued a request for proposals to advertise the rental assistance program on September 9th. It was a 2-week RFP period. We followed all of the city's formal procurement processes with respect to advertising the RFP in a newspaper of regional significance, in this case, the LA Times or OC Register, as well as posting it to our online bid house, which is Planet Bids. It's a nationally known site for public agencies to submit bids onto. And as well as we send it manually to our nonprofit partners that we are currently engaged with providing services within our community. On the 23rd, that RFP closed and we received 2 proposals. And that leads us to where we are this evening, which is to ask the council for recommendation for our city manager and our executive director of our housing authority to execute those substantial subrecipient agreements, excuse me. Talk a little bit about the 2 proposals that we received. At first, I was a little disappointed that we only received 2 proposals, but after receiving both proposals, I was pleased to know that the 2 that did submit were nonprofit organizations that have a lot of experience administering these types of programs in our community and are currently doing it actually and have done it. And certainly know our clients that they'll be serving. Their spin, of course, is headquartered in Costa Mesa that would be serving people in need. They submitted a proposal for $207,000 to provide mainly assistance for families with households with children. And they're currently providing such assistance to members of the community with their own operational funding. And they're one of 9 Family Solutions collaborative access members in the county, which essentially is a coalition of nonprofit agencies that whose mission is solely to streamline the processes of getting families assistance in a timely manner. So that was good news. And then our other proposal was from Mercy House Living Centers, which of course they're our current operator at the temporary bridge shelter, and they'll be our future operator at our permanent bridge shelter. Good thing about Mercy House is we've engaged them in prior CDBG rental assistance programs to help our residents in fiscal 19 and 20. So from 2018 to 2020, they've done it on a much smaller scale, but they're familiar with the program and what it and how to benefit and what members of the community tend to be the most in need. And again, they can sort of deliver on the households that may only have one or two individuals living there as opposed to a family. They submitted a proposal for $181,321. Just to give you a little bit of background information to lead up to a little bit of discussion on our program guidelines. These two tables make up sort of the bulk of the program guidelines itself. The good news about this CDBG rental assistance program, the emergency relief program, and the CARES Act is it allows us to serve households that are at the 80% area median income limit range, which most of the time these programs tend to stop at the 50% range, very low or low. In this case, we can go up to 80%. And as you can see, for household sizes, for a household of four, for example, that'd be $102,450. These are Orange County HUD-based 2020 AMI rates, and this is gross income. So this would be minus any type of payroll taxes or deductions. The table on the right talks a little bit about the fair market rents in Costa Mesa, Orange County to be specific, and the fair market rent market rather, and what HUD considers the Santa Ana, Anaheim, Irvine metro area. As you can see, they're quite high. So it takes us to our rental assistance program guidelines. And again, this is our emergency temporary rental assistance program. This is going to be a lot different than a affordable housing-based rental assistance program, like a tenant-based rental assistance program or something administered through a home program. This, again, we have the luxury of being able to assist households with income levels at or below 80% versus something that's below 50% or 30 to 50. We're really pleased to learn that in the CARES Act, it provides emergency rental payment for rent in arrears. So that means we can help folks who are really in the very beginning got hit hard by the pandemic and who still may very well be hit. We decided to write our guidelines for April 1st forward because the CARES Act itself passed on the 28th of March. And we felt that most folks who were having issues making rent payments due to the pandemic most likely weren't able to get to work after mid-March. This program provides up to 3 months or $6,000 per household in rental payment assistance, whichever is less. And that asterisk is there because we learned on September 11th when HUD HUD essentially allocated an additional $2 billion of that original $5 billion more towards city entitlement cities. And we learned that they did that specifically because their intent is to keep individuals in their homes. And so then they went ahead and said any city administering one of these programs can actually up that to 6 months. So we had issued our RFP on September 9th, where we had written in what was previously in the CARES Act as 3 months. So that still can be amended moving forward. We can do that administratively. The good thing about this program is versus once again, any type of affordable housing-based program is our landlords aren't subject to any certifications or inspections or property inspections of that matter like they would be if they were participating in some sort of tenant-based rental assistance program. And our checks, the money goes directly to the landlords or to the property manager by the nonprofit, not to the tenants. So, and this is really an important feature because this allows us to get our tenants to get our landlords to get their payments in a very timely manner. The city's accounts payable process is very comprehensive, and it takes a little bit longer to issue payments. So this way, these nonprofits can act a lot more swiftly in getting payments to the people who need them in a timely manner. Also, just to point out, this program, one of the threshold requirements is it's basically ineligible for residents who are already receiving rental assistance from another program, like a Section 8 program. So that pretty much wraps up the program guidelines. Those are outlined in the request for proposals that was attached to your staff report. So here we are back at the recommendation. The recommendation is to once again authorize the city manager or the executive director to execute a subrecipient agreement with Serving People in Need in an amount not to exceed $207,000 for program administration of the CDBG CV rental assistance program for households with children. And then also to authorize the city manager and the executive director of our housing authority to execute a subrecipient agreement with Mercy House Living Centers in an amount not to exceed $180,321, also for program administration of the CDBG CV rental assistance program for households with children. Excuse me, without children.
Thank you so much, Mr. Neiman. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to go to council member questions. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, do you have any questions?
Yes. So I was kind of surprised by this because, I remember, I might have a misrecollection of what we voted on back when with the rental assistance, but I thought that the number that we set aside was $750. I remember us having a number and then we ended up moving more money into it and the number was $750, not $668, but it's $668, whatever it is, $750, $668, let's not quibble. And maybe it's another number. And maybe
Yes.
I'm not understanding any of this. Susan, let's stop there with the top number.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and City Council members, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, sorry. The amount that you're recollecting is actually the home tenant-based rental assistance, where staff recommended $75,000 be allocated to that program, and the council at that time doubled that to $150,000. And that program is currently under bid right now for a provider and will be coming forward to the council in the coming meetings. This amount here is the CDBG COVID money that came to the council in June, and that was one allocation of $668. And as was presented by Mitch Neiman in his report, HUD has recently also given us an additional allocation, which you'll be hearing back soon. So this is really the first tranche of, you'll see some of this COVID rental assistance relief programming rolling out, the actual contracts for the nonprofits.
All right, I got it. Now you fixed my memory. That's good. That's good. Thank you. But so then I look at the cost of administration, and so let's say it's $668, what is in the staff, and you say $668, and then you subtract $207, and you could subtract $180, and you get down to $281,000. I'm rounding.
Sure.
$281,000 that could be distributed, and then when you figure 6,000 per family, which is, I think, is the maximum, could be lower. But you're hitting, if it's 6,000, you're hitting 46 families out of God knows how many families that need rental assistance. So I'm candidly, I was surprised that the cost of administrating the program was so high relative to the amount of the money being administered. And so I'm wondering, it's like, so what are we getting for these funds? If there's a second tranche, does this 207 and 180 cover the second tranche, third tranche, and so forth and so on? Or are we really essentially paying well over half of the money that we're receiving from the federal government to administer that money that we're receiving? And so I'm sure I'm misunderstanding this. Explain to me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I can clear that up. I can help you clear that up. So back in June 16th, when the 668, 658 came before council, there was an administrative component for the city that was 15%. So that's just to manage the entire allocation. That's very similar and in line with our standard CDBG entitlement program. So that took $100,300 off that 668, 658 right from the beginning. So then what you're left over with was 568, 358. And if you subtract the contracts, the 207 and the, what was it, the 181, 321, 180, 321, then you're left with the remaining funds of the 181, 038. And with respect to the administration, the proposals, if you notice, the administrative costs are pretty much in line with HUD. SPINS was, I want to say 15%, and the other consultant, Mercy House, theirs was 13%. They did propose additional costs in their proposal, but again, the request from staff is to authorize the city manager not only to execute these subrecipient agreements, but also to negotiate the scope of work and fee schedule. So we'll be certainly negotiating that fee schedule to make sure that administrative component for our nonprofit consultants stays under that 15% as well, to keep us in line with our expenses.
Yes, I guess it's unclear though. How much is it going to cost to administer $207,000?
$31,050.
Okay, is that what?
Which is 15%.
Let me add something to that, please, Mitch.
Sure.
Because with regard to these two providers, and technically HUD does allow for 15% administration on any of the grants that we would subrecipient. But to Mayor Pro Tem's point, let me just be clear that we put a cap of 3 months or 6,000, whichever is less. But our experience, and the reason we did that is really because we wanted to be able to mitigate the impacts of the eviction moratorium that's been going on for months on end. But we know that right now, SPIN is providing services to families in Costa Mesa, and they're not spending anywhere near the 6,000. They're assisting people at a much lower rate. And with regards to and this is going to be a little confusing, but I do need to explain that the 15% admin is really to run the program and for the accountants and things like that. And they probably don't need 15% to do that. 7% would go to the service provider. The rest of the funding that they would be using is for staff time, to cut the checks, to talk to the landlords, to do all of that legwork. There is some staff funding within each one of these proposals, and we just are submitting this to the council tonight for your consideration so we can go back to both of those nonprofits and negotiate the actual subrecipient agreement and put those dollars into the most impactful line items to have the impact that we're seeking. When they did their RFP response, they were looking at, okay, 6,000 per family. I might serve 50 families at 6,000 max each, right? But we know that that's not what they're actually doing in practice. They're serving a lot more people. Hopefully they won't need to spend that full amount on each and every household that they serve. So I expect them to serve quite a bit more families, or I'll say households, because SPIN is only able to serve families, whereas Mercy House can serve the individuals, which is why we're bringing forward to actually fund both submissions.
Well, hold on one second. So I'm just trying to understand what I'm voting on here. Okay. So it says, and maybe I don't understand this stuff as well. So I just want to read from the recommendations. It says, authorize the city manager, executive director to execute a subrecipient agreement with SPIN in an amount not to exceed 207 for program administration of rental assistance program for households with children. It has then similar language for program administration. So are you telling me that SPIN or Mercy House will get out of that 207 15%, and the rest of the 207 will go to tenants to help them pay their rent. Is that what you're saying?
It'll go to landlords and property managers, not to tenants.
Right, okay.
Yes, there's some staff costs in there as well, but it's really probably going to be more like 7% admin instead of 15. 15 is the total amount, but we're the lead agency, so we can keep 7. They would get 7, and then the rest would be all in. The word administration, I think, is throwing people off, but it's the operations of the actual program where they have staff that are working with clients, working with landlords, paying the gap rental assistance that's needed.
Right, I know, but it's what's going to the landlord. It's like, are you telling me that if I do the math and I say,
Councilman Guinness is ahead of you, so hold on.
Yeah.
Go to the last page of attachment 2 and it spells it out.
Last page of attachment 2.
Yeah, but it says clearly 20 and 30 people or households. They have a number in there.
It's a proposal.
It's
not
a proposal.
Negotiated to be final.
Yeah, in our based on our maximum amount, it would be more like about 55 households. But again, as Susan mentioned, we don't expect everyone to max out their 3 months, or based on those fair market rents, we don't expect everyone to have a $2,000 per month request. I mean, they could have, the beauty of using these nonprofit organizations is they have gap analysis and rental income verification tools because they do these programs. So they're going to audit their applicants' W-2s and their income statements and their households, and they have to do their due diligence before they issue any payments to landlords. And that's what we pay. That administration pays for that due diligence to really get those payments out the door quickly to those landlords. So, I mean, they as much as they'd like to be able to do it for free, they need to have some kind of overhead and payment of staff to conduct that due diligence.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Now, I think I understand sufficiently. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Guinness and then Councilor Marr.
By going with 2 different providers, I think you sort of answered my question because their costs can't exceed 15% anyway. But by going with 2 different providers, do we risk losing more of our funding to administrative purposes, or are we pretty secure that it's going to cost the same regardless? Would we achieve economies of scale that might let us serve more people if we went with one provider?
It really doesn't, in the fact that the 15% is built into their code. When we issued the RFP, we didn't give them a cap. We said, what are you capable of providing? We have, they knew our staff report. They knew what our round 1 allocation is. They know what our round 2 allocations are going to be. And they know the demand on the street, but their organizations can only administer so much. They can only take on so much. So it was really a sort of a breath of fresh air for us that we received 2, because if we would have had one of them say that they were only capable of providing $60,000 or administering something like that, that's what we would have to work with. So we're really at the mercy of our nonprofits' capacity to be able to administer this program. Because these are one-time funds, and this is which need to be spent within 3 years, at least 80% of them. And so our nonprofit agencies are certainly looking at their staffing levels and how they can incorporate that into their overall blend of services and wraparound services and case management services that they already provide to these families. And coincidentally, we lucked out by having one sole mission to be helping families, and the other that can actually help individuals, and families. So we were able to cover all the demographics here in Costa Mesa, I thought, as opposed to if we were to only contract with SPIN, their mission is really to assist families. I mean, they're part of the family collaborative, like I mentioned, and we would have left out a whole gamut of folks that don't have children that might need this assistance as well, or individuals. So,
Councilor Guinness, any other questions?
Yeah, and then I know we haven't heard from the public and it's way premature for a motion, but at such time as we get to that, would it be actually a little more clear and maybe satisfy everyone's concerns, if instead of saying that the amount was for program administration of a rental assistance program, if we said to provide a rental assistance program for households with children or without children, including administrative costs? maybe that might kind of clarify things and avoid misunderstandings in the future.
Yeah, no problem.
That's a good comment. Yeah, we chose the language we chose because we didn't want to say make rental payments too.
Okay, I'm going to open up for public comment.
Okay, thank you. What, didn't Miss Mara want to say
she
something?
didn't want it. She didn't want it. She just had
Okay.
no. At this time, I'll open this item up for public comment. If you'd like to speak to this item, please raise your hand in the participants window or press star 9 on your phone. Anybody? Looks like nobody. I'm going to close public comment. Council, anyone wishing to make a motion, please raise your hand. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, is that left over? Okay. Councilmember Mar, then Chavez.
I'll move to approve the item.
Okay, Councilmember Chavez.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councilmember Mar, you want to speak to it?
I do not. Thank you for putting this together so quickly, staff. I feel like we just talked about this like 2 weeks ago, and then boom, there was an item on the agenda. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Chavez.
Definitely want to echo Councilmember Mar's briefness and appreciate the staff. You know, this is really important for our residents that they know they have relief if they need it. I'm very happy that there's an 80% percentile for income because truthfully, people that need this are those who are suffering due to COVID. So I'm very happy for staff, very happy for the two providers, and happy to vote yes on this.
Okay. Seeing no further comments or questions, I'll be supporting the motion. I think we all would agree we want it to be very inexpensive to administer, so more money goes to more families. Okay? Question.
Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilmember Guinness,
Yes.
Councilmember Mar,
Yes.
Councilmember Reynolds,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to add, sorry, I missed my the comment piece. Just want to add that kind of keep in context, Councilmember Stevens, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens alluded to this, that this is both critical, but also just a tiny drop in the bucket. So love to continue to learn more about opportunities to help a much, much bigger population of people who are going to need it. I did the math in 2 ways and calculated that at risk, based on some of the metrics we hear, 65% renters, 30% of renters at risk, probably $12 million a month or so to address the housing instability right now. So it truly a drop in the bucket and a very, very serious issue. So thank you for the quick action here. Yes. Thanks.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Foley,
Yes.
motion carries 6-0.
Okay, great job, everybody. Okay, final item of business is adjournment. No. Is there any other suggestions, comments, questions? If you have any. Oh, of course. Councilor again.
If we're coming back for closed session, do we go to the original Zoom thing or do we stay on this one?
Good question. Ms. Green?
I'm not quite sure because Ms. Barlow, did you sign off that other meeting or is that still open?
I don't think it's open, and here's why, because I accidentally clicked on that, trying to click on this meeting, and it just kind of kept spinning the hourglass.
If you would all like to stay on here, we can remove everybody else.
Whatever is confidential, because we're going into closed session.
Okay.
Whoever's more secure.
I'm sure folks will willingly remove themselves.
Yeah,
We'll figure out the logistics.
But council, please stay on this meeting.
And I'll adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you.